All right. I'm going to give out a quick report out from closed session. So before we start, the City Council just met on 3 closed session items, and there's nothing to report out at this time. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for a committee interview being held just before our council meeting this evening. We will be interviewing one candidate for one vacancy with a term expiring March 31st, 2025 on the Wetlands and Creeks Committee. Do we have any public comment for this special meeting before we hold this interview? No. All right. Well, welcome, Nathaniel Pope. We are going to go through and ask you some questions. Try to keep your answer at about a minute. If you need us to repeat anything or if you have anything additional, great. I'm going to start with Council Member Schaefer.
All right, welcome. Good to have you here. My first question is just why are you interested in serving on the Wetlands and Creeks Committee, and what skill set can you bring to this committee?
Hello, everybody. I am interested because I walk my dog very frequently, or in and around town at the marsh and Janes Creek side of the community forest frequently, and I just have been here for a long time and feel a sort of civic duty to try to at least give my expertise to the city to help manage the forests and wetlands and creeks here. And my expertise being, I am a registered professional forester. I passed last July the exam, and basically I have a breadth of knowledge in forestry, forest ecosystems, and well, as we know where our water originates, it's in the woods. So.
Thank you. Welcome. So what do you see as upcoming opportunities and challenges for the city's wetland, creek, and riparian areas?
Probably the biggest challenge that I see is the city trying to accommodate the growth of Cal Poly through its expansion with several housing developments in the area, whether it's attached to the university or not. As we know, like building construction has big impacts on water quality and runoff. So that would be where I'd see the biggest opportunity to do something, I guess.
Great, thank you. Describe your knowledge, experience, and or connection to Arcata's wetlands, creeks, or sensitive habitat areas.
As a individual, I have my hobbies include fly fishing and duck hunting, and so through those hobbies, I've picked up several. I've just learned a lot about the ecosystem in and around Arcata and the watersheds and creeks in the North Coast region, how they operate, and then through work as well, working in different areas in and around Humboldt County that have very similar watersheds to what we have in Arcata has, just given me that knowledge of. So.
Wonderful, thank you.
So Nathaniel, my question to you is, restoration and monitoring are important to inform our science-based decision-making and future management. And please describe your experience or expertise with natural resource restoration or monitoring that could be an asset to the city. So thank you.
As far as restoration efforts that I've done is I have experience doing manual labor as well as permitting a oak woodland management silviculture within a timber harvest plan, that being the restoration of a oak woodland on the company property that I work for. So
In some ways,
Yeah.
you sort of answered that question before, but thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Could you share an example of successful collaboration that you've been a part of in the realm of restoration, open space, or community building? And then what made that collaboration successful?
As an RPF for a timber company, I have proposed harvest units adjacent to other landowners that are not industrial timber companies. And as part of those projects, I've reached out to these neighbors and come to agreements with what exactly they want done in conjunction with what the company sees fit to protect their resources, aesthetic, visual, and timber resources on their properties through just reaching out, meeting with them, and coming to an agreement, whether that's a compromise or both parties get exactly what they want out of it.
All right, wonderful. Does anybody have any other questions for Mr. Pope? All right, well, thank you so much. We will be making our decision during new business. You're welcome to stick around and watch the meeting, or
So I just want, the Wetlands Committee meets the third Tuesday of the month, and that works well for you?
Yes, and that's at 6 p.m.
And it's 6 times a year, so it's not burdensome.
That
Okay.
works just fine for me.
Thank you.
I have a really quick question. Where's your favorite place or places for fly fishing?
I would probably say the Trinity River, any section of it. Big fan of fishing there.
all right, well, wonderful. Thank you so very much. All right, and this will conclude our Wetlands and Creeks Committee interview. And it looks like we will come back for our regular meeting at 6 o'clock. All right, 6 o'clock. Let's get started. Good evening. Good evening, and thank you for viewing the April 3rd meeting of the Arcata City Council. The City Council meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting with both in-person attendance and teleconference access via Zoom. We'll start with a land acknowledgement. The City of Arcata acknowledges that the lands we are located on are the unceded ancestral lands of the Wiyot tribe. The land that Arcata rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Gunidi, meaning over in the woods or among the redwoods. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments removed the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the land and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The City of Arcata acknowledges the Wiyot community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement seeks to aid in dismantling the legacy narratives of settler colonialism. If you would like to, please join me for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
Will the city clerk please call roll?
Mayor Matthews,
Here.
Vice Mayor Stillman,
Present.
Councilmember Schaefer,
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar,
Here.
Councilmember White,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. If you wish to make a comment during the meeting, either at the 2 open public comment periods or for an individual agenda item, there are 3 ways to do so. If you are here in person, please line up behind the podium when the item you would like to speak on is accepting public comment. If you are logged into Zoom, click Raise Your Hand when it is time for public comment on the item you wish to speak on. And if you are on the phone, press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. When it is your turn, you'll be prompted to dial *6 on your phone. For each item, we will be taking in-person public comment first and then move to online comments. We will not be going back and forth, so if you're wanting to comment, please line up at the podium or raise your electronic hand as soon as public comment is requested for that item. We'll now have ceremonial matters. The first ceremonial matter is a proclamation in recognition of the 2024 Godwit Days Spring Migration Bird Festival from April 18th to 21st, 2024, and that will be read by Councilwoman Schaefer.
In recognition of the 2024 Godwit Days, whereas about 85 million Americans enjoy observing, photographing, or feeding wild birds, and a 2011 U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service study found that birdwatchers contributed about $32 billion to the U.S. economy. And whereas birding is the 15th most popular outdoor activity, just below bicycling, about 18 million birders take trips exclusively to commune with other birders or count birds by sight or sound. And whereas the Godwit Days Spring Migration Bird Festival showcases the area's rich diversity of birds, normally attracting tourists from all over the United States, and makes Humboldt County a birding destination. And whereas Godwit Days has attracted over 350 registered participants in past years, with over 50% of whom came from out of the area. And whereas ecotourism continues to be an important contributing segment of the North Coast economy, Humboldt Bay, its river estuaries, the region's mountains, coniferous forests, and rugged ocean coast habitat offers a variety of bird species for viewing that surpasses the total bird species counts of 40 different states and 10 Canadian provinces. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes the Humboldt County businesses and residents who are participating in the 2024 Godwit Days Spring Migration Bird Festival, as well as future birding visitors to the Pacific North Coast. May they be inspired to migrate back, just as the birds have been doing for centuries. Dated today, April 3rd, signed by our Mayor, Meredith Matthews. And then we have the chair of the Godwit Days Board of Directors here to accept it, who happens to be Vice Mayor Stillman.
I'd like to thank the City of Arcata for this proclamation. And once again, we're meeting on a weekly basis because we're getting so close to it. And our mayor will also be giving an opening address on Friday night for a few minutes as we open with the zoo. So this year we thought the zoo is doing so many things around restoration of birds that would be interesting to find out what they've been doing. And so that's our program on Friday night. And then on Saturday, we'll have our plenary speaker. Godwit Days was started by the city of Arcata with their Economic Development Committee, began that probably 27 years ago. And in the beginning, it was assigned to the assistant city manager. None of them were really excited about running events. But later, Arcata Main Street took it over, and then it became a nonprofit. So we operate as a nonprofit. And we have, I think, about 257 people already registered for it. And we're ahead of the game normally, and we already know who's going to be doing things next year. So I'd like to thank you very much for this proclamation.
Thank you so much. And the next proclamation is in recognition of the Week of the Young Child, April 6th, 12th, 2024, and this proclamation will be read by Councilman White.
Yeah, so in recognition of the Week of the Young Child, April 6th through the 12th, 2024, whereas North Coast Children's Services and other local organizations, in conjunction with the National Association of Education of Young Children, are celebrating the Week of Young Children from April 6th through the 12th, 2024, and whereas children's cognitive, physical, social, emotional, and language and literacy development are built on the foundation of children's positive interactions with adults, peers, and their environment. And whereas participation in high-quality early childhood education saves taxpayer dollars, makes working families more economically secure, and prepares children to succeed in school, earn higher wages, and live healthier lives. And whereas high-quality early childhood education depends on early childhood educators who ensure that children supported by families have the early experiences they need for a strong foundation. And whereas North Coast Children's Services, founded as a parent cooperative in 1969, has served young children in our community for over 50 years, serving over 600 of our community's neediest children and families annually. And whereas North Coast Children's Services Head Start and Early Head Start and state-funded programs' success in improving the early learning outcomes rests in the leadership of parents and support from local businesses, municipalities, community members, and neighbors, as well as a skilled workforce. And whereas teachers and other helpers who make a difference in the lives of young children in Arcata deserve thanks and recognition, and public policies that support early learning for young children are crucial to the future of well-being of our community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of our City of Arcata hereby recognizes the week of April 6th through the 12th, 2024 as the Week of the Young Child, and encourages our community to make an investment in early childhood education because early years are learning years. Dated April 3rd, 2024 by Meredith Matthews. And the gentleman is going to be our Executive Director, North Coast Children's Services, Rodney Owen.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Not only do our programs support just children, we support families too, and that, through social service supports and also allowing parents to the opportunity to work when we're providing childcare. But we also bring into the community a lot of economic benefits. Last year, we brought in over $14 million to the community, and a lot of that goes through wages and into the local economy. And I think everybody knows the importance of these early years in children's lives. And so thank you for this proclamation and recognition for the work that our staff does. It's appreciated.
And our last proclamation of the day is in recognition of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, April 2024, and Councilwoman Atkins Salazar will be reading that.
Thank you. Whereas sexualized violence affects children, youth, adults, and elders of all genders from all racial, cultural, and economic backgrounds, with public health and social justice implications for every person in Arcata. And whereas staff and volunteers of the North Coast Rape Crisis Team provide 24-hour service to survivors and their significant others, and encourages every person to end sexualized violence by providing prevention education and awareness-raising programs throughout Humboldt and Del Norte counties. And whereas no one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate sexual assault on their own, but can, through collaboration and partnership, work together to support those impacted, improve responses, and ensure that survivors are not re-victimized. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata reaffirms its commitment to the North Coast Rape Crisis Team and its vision, HEAL, help, empower, affirm, listen, and acknowledges April 2024 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. It's dated today and signed by our Mayor Matthews. And we have today the Education and Outreach Manager, Kira Morse, here to get that.
Oh my gosh. All right. Thank you to the Arcata City Council for your continued support of Sexual Assault Awareness Month and the North Coast Rape Crisis Team. Our team continues to provide free and confidential services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to anyone of any age or gender who has experienced or been affected by sexualized violence. In the past year, our team has served over 470 survivors in Humboldt County alone and their families through advocacy, accompaniment, crisis intervention, and counseling. Our services are rooted in our values to heal. We aim to help survivors by meeting them where they are emotionally as well as geographically. We aim to empower survivors and for them to empower themselves through their healing journey, to affirm their choices and listen to their stories. Our work is not possible without partner agencies, most notably law enforcement, the District Attorney's Office, sexual assault nurse examiners, and tribal organizations. Our team has been actively seeking donations to continue our efforts in supporting survivors through numerous fundraisers. To keep up to date on where our team is going to be in April, Sexual Assault Awareness Month, please check out our social media accounts as well as our website. We can be found on Instagram at NCRCT Humboldt and Facebook as the North Coast Rape Crisis Team. We're also having our banner up in the Arcata Plaza. So if you guys wanted to check that out, you can post a picture, tag us, it'd be highly appreciated. Thank you again for honoring our work and the survivors that we serve.
Thank you so much. Next, we have a report by committee. So our annual report for the Wetlands and Creeks Committee, and Justin Hawkins, the vice chair of that committee, is going to give us a report.
Yes, hello, my name is Justin Hawkins. I'm the vice chair of the Wetlands and Creeks Committee. We're comprised of environmental professionals with many decades worth of restoration experience. And I'm just going to go over a couple highlights from our annual report. We were able to provide feedback on the city's general plan, particularly the resource conservation and management element. We also served on the ad hoc group for the open space parks and trails special tax, where we are able to advocate for a new groundskeeper position at the marsh, as well as the help channel funding towards fish surveys amongst our urban creeks, particularly Janes and Jolly Giant Creek. And that was in collaboration with Cal Poly Humboldt grad students led by local fish biologist Darren Ward. And they had some pretty exciting results. We have been consistently finding coho juvenile in our creeks. They're a threatened species and they're native to here. And so building off that, we've been developing a concept proposal for CDFW to help generate funding for a planning grant around Jolly Giant Creek. This is sort of to help navigate development, which is much needed in the city, and see how we can better support our creek while meeting our developmental needs. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, please.
I noticed one of the things you were interested in is being able to know what was going on with the other committees. I think I read that in your report.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Plus
absolutely.
I made a note. And so I was wondering, maybe the annual reports the committees do, maybe they should be disseminated to the other committees so that everyone would have a way. I know we're gonna soon be coming along and having all the chairs together for all the committees, but would that be a helpful thing, as if your committee had access to those reports when they come to us?
Yeah, I believe so. You know, I think more documentation is helpful when people have time to get into it. I will say the the ad hoc, the open space parks and trail special tax was also a great opportunity where I met Parks and Rec and also community forest committee members there too. And so I think having more things like that might help as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you so much. All right, it's time for early oral communication. The city values your comment. This 15-minute time period allows people to address the council on matters that are not on the agenda. Please know that pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action on items that are not listed on the posted agenda. At the end of all oral communications, the city may respond to statements. Supported requests that require council action will be set for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers will be limited to 2 minutes. There will also be time at the end for the public to comment specifically on each agenda item, and again at the end of the meeting under item 12. Please make your way to the podium and raise your hand if you're on Zoom, and press *9 if you're calling in by phone and wish to make comment. So if you'd like to make public comment, please line up.
Good evening, Council. I'm Fred Wise. Last night, the Council had your annual goal-setting study session. It was not televised, not streamed, and not recorded. The only way for the public to see it was to be there. Other study sessions have been streamed and recorded. I think that should become normal. There was an agenda item about the recent survey, had the results. In my opinion, that does not belong in a study session. It should have come to a regular city council meeting. The results can be seen on arcata1.com. I'll be writing more articles about it. There are a lot in that survey. The survey was about the possibility of increasing taxes to raise funds for Arcata. There were 2 items, one on building height, one on land use, that should not have been there. The building height said, quote, increasing the allowable building height from 4 stories to a maximum of 7 stories to increase the availability of housing affordable to working families while protecting open space. Who's going to say no to that question? No one. Affordable housing for working families, but it doesn't take 7-story buildings to make affordable housing for working families. And there's nothing in the Gateway Area Plan that says the purpose of those buildings is to provide affordable housing for working families. It also says that parking, whether in lots or on the street, is a low priority. 85% of the people said it was a high priority or medium priority for parking on the street. 75% said that off-street parking is important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Dave Meserve. I'm sure from closed session you found that the Earth Flag case has been decided by Judge Canning, and you didn't. All right. Well, it was decided. It was decided in the favor of the city. And what I just want to say is that I think just the name of the case speaks for what this case was about, which is the City of Arcata versus citizens in support of Measure M. The citizens of Arcata voted to fly the Earth flag at the top of city flagpoles, and the City of Arcata chose to file a suit opposing what the people of Arcata had decided. And the judge ruled, not totally unexpectedly, in favor of the state laws, which were all written back in the Red Scare into the McCarthy era, which declared that no flag shall ever fly above the American flag, and it will be a felony to fly a red flag is the one right next to the one that says that. So obviously I'm disappointed, but as this comes forward to you to consider, and it's funny that I brought it to you, but as it comes forward to you, I would ask that as we consider whether we're going to appeal, which I think we may, and knowing how they ruled, but that you would leave the flag there until this case is fully resolved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Deborah Loisel, and I'm a registered engineer, civil and transportation in California, and I moved here to get a second degree in science and management, and specifically planning and policy, and I'm in local planning, and we're studying housing, so one of our requirements is to come here and make a comment. So I'm commenting on housing because I pay more than my mortgage was in Sacramento for a very small apartment right next to the highway. So I was disappointed in the cost of living here. So I'm commenting on your general plan and the zoning code. I just believe there's too much yellow, which is the residential low density, on your zoning map, with not enough tan, which is the residential high zoning. So Arcata in the general plan talks about promoting high density residential neighborhoods by rezoning, yet all the neighborhoods near the university are still zoned yellow. And I'm guessing that is because the property owners do not want their property value to decline, opposed to working for affordable housing for the college students that come here, including me. So the low density residential zoning should be a thing of the past. It promotes sprawl and an increase in vehicle miles traveled. For the planet, for the community, for livability, high density residential and mixed use zoning needs to be represented as the majority of the residential land zoning in Arcata. College students bring a lot to this economy, and you should be making it easier for them to live, not harder. And I think the graduation rate is 49%, and I'm guessing most of them leave because they need to find a more economical place to live. And that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Rhiannon Lopez, and as a student and active community member, I encourage this council and community to continue to work towards building a better relationship with Cal Poly Humboldt and demand transparency and accountability from the university administration to be better about protecting students' safety and well-being and overall success. By continuing to address insecurity of housing and the university's failing of providing adequate resources for my fellow students. Far too many of us are living in our vehicles or crammed into houses just to afford the cost of living and student and school expenses. Arcata is on the right track with the development of multi-use and higher density housing demonstrated in the Gateway Access Plan and the incentive and resources provided for existing homeowners to explore the implementation of accessory dwelling units onto existing properties. These are good starting points, but we should not become complacent with minimal progress. We do not have the luxury of time. The City of Arcata and Cal Poly Humboldt have the unique and fleeting opportunity to be an innovative leader in how it addresses, the housing shortage with the expected population growth and the mitigation of climate change effects, while protecting our open spaces and ecological communities. I encourage the city to keep seeking input from students and other stakeholders who often leave the area due to the lack of resources, thus losing large contributors to the local economy and the potential workforce that could help address these issues. Here in Arcata, we have a unique composition of stakeholders and resources, such as the local university administration, programs and students, the Arcata populace, and local indigenous tribes to put perspectives together to develop sustainable and innovative, equitable adaptations to these projected events. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Gregory Daggett. I'm going to address the vote from last week from the Planning Commission, and I'll just make it clear that my position last week was the difference between Judith and the other commissioner that was on the commission already, which basically he didn't have any background at all. And we had Judith, who 16 years of experience and a PhD. So I think it was very unfortunate the direction you went. If it was in another environment, imagine it was over at the university, you know, there would be somebody asking you some questions about that, and you probably would have been reprimanded for it from the standpoint of how do you justify a person with zero experience and somebody with a PhD who's been working for free for 16 years and has basically been like the anchor there from the standpoint of we have new members that come in all the time, and she's the person that sort of, you know, knows more even than the staff. So I don't really buy your argument that it was just new blood, you know, that we needed somebody, you know, you were getting somebody new, but you chose to, you know, bump her off, and it just wasn't a very elegant way to do it, you know, somebody with that kind of experience and that many years, and you know, it made the newspaper or the Standard, and you know, there's a quote from her that basically feels like, you know, you just wanted her out of the way from the standpoint she was the one that was questioning things, and everybody else was pretty much, you know, overriding her at the time. So I think it was very unfortunate.
Thank you. We only have one person on Zoom, so I'm going to finish with these two public commenters from Portsmouth.
Thank you very much. My name's Joanne McGarry, and I want to talk about three things, but you got my emails, and what Gregory had to say, I echo a large part of what he has to say about the decision made last week. I want to let you know that this resolution on ceasefire, I attended the Humboldt Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Sunday before last, and they had it on their agenda, this exact resolution, and they, in consensus, adopted the same language of this resolution, except they put the Humboldt Unitarian Universalist Fellowship instead of the city of Arcata, and added the city of Arcata and the city of Eureka and the county as being recipients of that resolution that the Humboldt Unitarians passed. So I just want you to know, if you hadn't heard yet, that that happened. And hopefully other municipalities, including Eureka, will be considering the language of this. The second thing I want to say is agendas and knowing what's happening. The screens here talk a lot about different things on the agenda, but there are these screens now at different places that you can see a printout of what's happening. And it would be really nice, I think, if we had something like that during the meeting, so those people who are just attending and stuff could learn about what's happening on the agenda, you know, with some sort of screen. My final thing I want to say is that what Dave Meserve had to say is the city of Arcata versus the citizens of Measure whatever. This is a triangle. It's the people on the council, it's staff, and it's the people of the city of Arcata. And we are as important as anybody in this. So I want to just remind you that you are serving us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
As I understand, this is something that will be coming in front of the police chief soon, so I wanted to pipe in. Hello, my name is Natalie Walston. I currently own 2 plaza-facing businesses. I consider myself a compassionate person, and yes, yet I'm also a business owner. As a business owner, one of my primary goals is to attract and retain patrons, not just to my business, but to all businesses in Arcata. It is discouraging to day after day witness the activities that take place in the middle of the plaza, activities that undermine our ability to make our employees and patrons feel welcome and safe. The north side of the plaza has become home to an ongoing group of inhabitants who, when I arrive at 8:30 in the morning, are there, and they spend the entire day violating every single posted code with no interruption or interference. Their dogs run free on the plaza, they smoke, they drink, they yell and fight, they do drugs, they sell drugs, and they leave trash. They create an incredibly unwelcoming space for people whose sole intention is to be able to just walk down the sidewalk. In addition, they become a gravitational pull for people to both buy and sell drugs and join the party. We stare out at this all day, every day. Some rotating cast of characters, same daily decision on whether it's bad enough for us to call the police. We also see the sweet families visiting into town who unknowingly stroll down that side of the street only to have to walk through clouds of smoke and partying. If we, as the ones running and patronizing businesses, are chased around all day and fined for breaking parking code, why isn't the same being done for those violating codes and making the plaza feel unwelcome, unsafe, and undesirable? I understand that there are limits to what can be done, but in my 12 years of experience working on this plaza, I can tell you what I do know. This group follows the path of least resistance. They go where they know they will be left alone. I ask the city and the police department to make it a priority and not just leave them alone. Make it a persistent practice to clarify that these activities will not be tolerated and ignored. Please support us in attracting and retaining a steady base of patrons to the businesses we are all trying so hard to make successful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will go to Zoom.
All right, we have one speaker. Shannon, go ahead, Shannon.
Hi, City of Arcata. I wanted to thank you for passing the ceasefire resolution in Gaza last month. I wasn't able to come to the meeting where it was passed and by unanimous support and signed, so I wanted to thank everyone on the dais for doing that. I know it's a global issue, but I just wanted to emphasize that we are all connected and we are very much affected by global issues here. Stuff that we do here reverberates outside of here in our bubble. And I just want to remind the council respectfully that your words do matter and what you say matters. And I know it doesn't seem like this is important, but it's really important to the people. And I think we did make that evident to you by all of our showing of support for the ceasefire resolution, so thank you so much. I know it wasn't anyone's intention, but I read or I heard that someone said, now we can get back to work. And unfortunately, that really hurt my feelings. And I just wanted to say, I don't think it was your intention, but it does come across like dismissive. And it makes it feel like some people's, what people concerns people, what gets people to participate in public comment and in local politics isn't as important as others. So I just wanted to highlight that and just hope that there's some time for self-reflection amongst you all to make sure that you try not to do that. But thank you for passing a ceasefire. It's really important, especially when we're watching what's happening right now. It getting worse and worse, and all the poor children that are being slaughtered. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let us move to the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. A is approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of March 20th, 2024. B is a biweekly report on disbursements. C is to schedule a public hearing on Wednesday, April 17th, 2024 at 6:00 p.m. or as soon thereafter as possible for the matter to be heard for consideration of adoption of a resolution updating the City of Arcata fiscal year 2024-25 master fee schedule and direct staff to post and publish the public notice in accordance with the California Government Code Section 66016 and 6062A. D is to adopt resolution number 234-41, accepting the expansion of a public utility easement from Green Diamond Resource Company on a portion of assessor's parcel number 507-041-001 for water storage tank 1C, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. E is to approve the Arcata Corporation yard fence replacement and trail enhancement plans. And F is to adopt resolution number 234-40, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata accepting the 2023 General Plan Annual Progress Report. Would any members of the council like to pull an item from the consent calendar?
I'd like to pull item F.
Okay. Anybody from the public want to pull? E and F? Okay, so do we have a motion for A, B, C, and D?
So moved.
All right. We have a motion from Councilwoman Schaefer, and second by Councilwoman Stillman. Let's start with E. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, yes, me.
Yes, thank you. This is not a large issue, but I did want to bring it up. This is about the fence, security fence for the marsh. No one doubts that a security fence is needed. The question is the location of the fence. What I want to know is, why can't the fence be put back where it was before? That little section of the marsh is a favorite for me and probably many people. It has a kind of a canopy of trees that you walk under, makes kind of a little tunnel. I can live without it, of course, but the way the new fence is located requires a person to walk along South G Street for about the length of a football field, 350 feet. I recognize that's not the end of the world to do that, but when you go to the marsh, when I go to the marsh, I don't see cars at all. That would be the only place where you have to walk next to a city street. So the decision on where to put this fence was probably made a long time ago. I'm a little bugged. It says the purpose of the project is to enhance public access at the Ox Pond Trail while providing for public safety by preventing public access to the corporate yards. That's all true, but that's not really what this project is about. We need the fence, you know, we're all clear on that. But what I want to know is, why can't it be where it used to be? I think it'll be a better path, better marsh. In terms of that little section is constricted, but there are other sections right along there that are actually more constricted. So just a little call out for what is one of my favorite little stretches of the marsh. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody want to comment or make a motion for item E?
I'll make a motion to approve item E.
I will second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilmember Atkins Salazar and a second by Councilmember Schaefer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Councilmember White, want to start off with F?
Okay. I just would like to direct y'all to page 89 of our packet. While most cities are scrambling to meet our regional housing needs allocation numbers, the city of Arcata has now permitted 79% of our total RENA allocation numbers for housing. So this is above what the city should be at 62.5% at this point during our RENA cycle. We now have exceeded our very low income and moderate income, with only 12 more units in the low income level remaining to happen in this planning period, which is an 8-year planning period, 2019 to 2027. So just want to say great job and a big congratulations to Arcata.
Did we have any comment on this, Mr. Daggett, if you wanted to?
Okay, so with F, you're accepting the 2023 annual progress report. I'm going to direct you to section 5, health and safety. This section reviews city progress towards implementing and following elements, public safety and noise. So I don't know what you're trying to do here. I've been talking about the noise element for the last 2.5 years, and there has not been any progress at all. There hasn't even been one step forward in that direction. So it's like, I've talked to Karen, I've talked to the police chief, I've talked to the council. So how can you be saying that you're making progress on the noise element when there's absolutely no progress whatsoever? So as far as the safety, I've talked about this standpoint from the vehicles that are going through our streets and nobody's stopping them. You know, whether it's muffler or speed, there has been absolutely no progress at all. So this is completely false. So how can you, I mean, this isn't even the first year, it was last year and the year before, keep repeating and telling to the state that you're making progress on these laws, and you're absolutely not. And what's also a little disturbing is last week with the Planning Commission, this was there too, and they had the air element that was part of it. And I haven't really been talking about that too much from the standpoint, but it's just kind of like my experiences living all over California and having, you know, smog tests done annually and pointing out that also your EIR said this was very significant. And now to see this, to have the air element just drop completely off this annual report is just a little unbelievable. So maybe we have our attorney here, maybe he can answer why the city doesn't think they need to like make any attempt to do anything regarding these things. And you know that it's like, what meeting have I not talked about this in the last 2 years? I mean, I'm sure you're really tired of it. I'm tired of it. And, you know, it's just kind of like, I never thought when I first started this that I would have to be 2 years later still talking about it. I just thought you would just like immediately, you know, start addressing and make some attempt to do it. But for 2 years later, no attempt at all is just, I mean, I just don't, I mean, I'm just trying to keep pointing you in the right direction, to go in the right direction. And it's like, what is going on with the city that it's just unbelievable. So it would be nice at some point someone could actually address this. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody? Is there more comment? Yes, all right.
Yes, good evening. I want to thank Councilmember White for pointing out the regional housing needs allocation. I'm handing out here that chart, and I'm going to look at it from a different direction. From 2019 to 2023, we can see that Arcata has, in an excellent fashion, met its deed-restricted, very low, and deed-restricted low-income housing needs. This is problematic for a lot of communities. And we have met the moderate housing needs for non-deed restricted housing. But you can see over a 5-year period, there has not been a single housing unit of deed restricted moderate income of apartment or house. 5 years, not a single one. And then in the above moderate income bracket, we've seen 94 units out of a total allocation of 262. That's just 36%. This is corresponds, above moderate income corresponds to a monthly rent of about $2,200 a month, not very much. This is what we've been told by the realtors. The Humboldt Board of Realtors gave a presentation to the Planning Commission. Nothing came out of that presentation. I mean, they didn't discuss it even one word. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying I have an answer, but I did want to point out to you and to the public that it's at the higher end or even the moderate end that we're having our difficulties. Thanks.
Thank you.
And before I, what item was that one? F, okay. Before I make a motion for that, I just do want to address that. As someone with very good knowledge of the construction industry, I can tell you that is a huge challenge, not only in Arcata, but in our state. And the rising costs of construction materials and the very, very restrictive laws are playing into that. So Arcata is not unique to that, and hopefully something will change because it is a problem. So I hear you. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve item F.
I will second.
All right, we have a motion from Councilwoman Atkins Salazar and a second from Councilwoman Schaefer. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, the motion passes. And with that, let's move on to new business. Our first item is to appoint one new member to the Wetlands and Creeks Committee for a term expiring March 31st, 2025. Do we have any questions, comments from the council?
No, I would like to thank Nathaniel Pope for his applicant and make a motion to appoint him to the Wetlands and Creek Committee with a term ending March 31st, 2025.
I would second that motion.
All right, we have a motion from Councilwoman Atkins Salazar and a second from Councilwoman Stillman. Before I go to the final vote, do we have any public comment on this item? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations. Glad you could stick around to see that. All right. And now, okay, we are going to move on to review and approve the revised city officials protocol manual. Can we have a staff report from our city attorney, Doug White?
Now the exciting part of the meeting. So, Mayor and council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today on the protocol manual. I think this was one of the items when we first came on board that we kind of wanted to go through and make some recommended changes to. In addition to that, there's really just some areas where it's more of a policy discussion about like how you would want to do it. I do want to say that from the outset, the goal has and will continue to be to keep Arcata. There are certainly unique aspects that you have that are different than other clients that we represent, and we want to preserve those. But at the same time, we also want to eliminate confusion and create efficiency by maybe consolidating a number of different documents and resolutions maybe into one comprehensive set of rules that can be followed throughout the city, whether it's the city council or one of our commissions or advisory boards. So with that, let me give you a little bit of flavor of what we're going to do. We're going to go through just kind of what it is, because even though I think most of you will be very familiar with what the protocol manual is, or the city officials handbook, however people want to refer to it as, the public may not. So we'll go through kind of what it is and how it's structured first. Then we'll go through some of the recommended changes that we've made. And then there'll be a few things that are some policy discussions that aren't represented on the PowerPoint that we'll go over. And then I think with any comments that you have, maybe we'll switch over then to the actual document itself, and we can kind of look at those and address any specifics that you have. So with that, let me kick it off on kind of our overview. And so what is it? It's a document of accepted practices that clarifies expectations of city official members. And I would say it actually goes beyond that. It includes members of the public and how the meeting's going to be conducted and what's the expectations of them. So it's kind of from electeds to staff to members of the public, so how the city's business is going to be conducted. And it provides a summary of important aspects of city official activities and responsibilities. Many of those things are just regurgitations of things that are already memorialized in law, but we want to make it easy for members of the public to have access to it, and also the people who, don't do this all the time, have jobs during the day, and they want to have a central place that they can go and look and kind of better understand their responsibilities if maybe they're on one of our commissions or boards. So in that, Chapter 1 is an introduction and overview to the document itself. It talks about that this is a council manager form of government, which essentially means that the city manager administers the city government and runs the city on a day-to-day basis. And then the city council is the legislative policy-making body. So you guys decide the policy, and then the city manager carries that policy out with the assistance, obviously, of city staff and the directors and so on. The city's governance is first and foremost bound by the codes of the state of California. And the Arcata Municipal Code comes after that. So anything that's in state code, unless it's been given to us, kind of preempts us. We're a general law city, so that means that we're governed by the government code unless there's a specific exemption that we carve it out. So we're not for those who would say we just follow the general laws, and most of those are going to be in the government code. The manual part is part of city governance, and it has our administrative documents. It has goals. It talks about the annual budget. It talks about financial audits, the general plan. Again, this is just a repository to have people know kind of what the city does, what the major components are, and helps them kind of ask the right questions if they want to get information. Chapter 2 talks about the city council powers and responsibilities. I think it makes clear that irrespective of what your title is, whether it's mayor or vice mayor or mayor pro tem, you all are council members and your votes are all equal. And we are bound by a majority vote of the council. And it's important to note that majority vote irrespective of how many folks are present, extends to ordinances, resolutions, and expenditures of money. So even if there are 4 of you here, there would have to be 3 that would have to vote for items like that to be passed. But that being said, we do live by a majority, and even if the majority goes against staff decision, or if there's a council member who's in the minority who doesn't like it, city staff has a legal obligation to take that majority edict and carry it through. And then it talks about how council members should refrain from participating in administrative affairs for the city. Again, we're starting to go through the protocol here. That would also extend to planning commissioners, other folks on different boards. We don't want council members calling up and saying, hey, stop what you're doing, road crew, please go fix the pothole in front of X's house today. And I've had that happen in other cities and had to deal with it, but it becomes a very inefficient use of city resources, and government can cause waste. It also creates a lot of internal conflict in terms of who we're supposed to, staff is supposed to take direction from, and it really breaks down the council manager form of government. So we don't want that, and that's why it's in there. It does, in terms of the council, we talked about the policies, but that's the ordinances that change the municipal code. You adopt and amend your operating and capital budgets, your procurement procedures. You appoint your 2 appointed officials, employees in the generic term, not in the literal term, because I'm an independent contractor, is the city manager and the city attorney. So we're the ones who work directly for you. Everybody else works under the city manager. And then you also do your appointments for advisory boards. So those are all under your authority. And you have the ability to call special elections, to declare emergencies, to put things like ballot measures on.
And to declare emergencies.
And
Those are separated.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, special elections and to declare emergencies, so 2 different things. And then council members may not be members of other city boards, commissions, committees, or task force. So you can't be a planning commissioner and a city council member, because those items are going to come in front of you, and you're going to be charged with being the final decision maker. Also, particularly as it relates to planning decisions, you often act as the appeal body. So that's one of the other reasons. It does not, just to be clear, it doesn't prohibit you from participating in, as a representative of the city on like JPAs and things of that nature. So for the public's benefit, those aren't inconsistent with what I just said. Under your existing rules, the mayor and vice mayor rotate every year during the first regular city council meeting in December. And then the mayor and vice mayor will be selected during council members' meetings in which election results are certified. These are going to be amongst the things that we want to kind of clarify and get some policy direction on. It is important to note that despite the fact that you have this established policy under the government code, you are allowed to pick your mayors and vice mayors however you determine and whenever you determine. So we just have what I would call guidelines or protocols, but the council still maintains the authority to make changes as it deems appropriate or fit. And the mayor, while being a member of the council, is the presiding officer of the council and performs ceremonial duties. They're in charge of running the meeting, things of that nature. But again, in all other aspects, they are the same as any other council member. Details of the protocol. So Chapter 3 goes through the protocols related to city staff, equipment use, meeting rooms, how mail works for council members, the city document library, use of equipment for personal matters. It's prohibited, same thing, for anything that's considered political. That's prohibited and illegal, so we don't want to do that. So this kind of just lays all that out. Chapter 4 goes through financial matters. So this provides for payment of modest stipends and supplemental benefits to members of the city council. None of you will be retiring on your city council stipend. State law does set the level of compensation. Some of those laws have actually changed as we've had a difficulty in other cities, at least, recruiting folks to the council, allowing council members to be paid at a higher compensation level than has been looked at in the past. So that's something we'll probably be looking at for you all as well. Council members may waive their monthly salaries as provided by state law. However, you guys are currently not, your current rules don't allow you to assign that salary to any person or entity. And under law, you're required to file your statements of economic interest, which is your Form 700s, and that's just to be consistent with state law. So that's all memorialized there. Chapter 4 goes through the city's travel policy. It goes through the credit card policy if issued. I think, and Karen can correct me if I'm wrong, but you currently do not, council members aren't issued credit cards, but we have the policy in place in the event that they ever are in the future that becomes.
Right, or if we do a single issuance for, say, travel at some point, we keep it in there.
Yep.
Otherwise, I can't find mine. My credit card.
No, I don't.
From the city, I can't find it anywhere.
There you go, I know. And then chapter 5 goes to communications. The mayor is typically charged with transmitting the city's positions on policies outside to the agencies on behalf of the city council. Again, that's one of the ceremonial duties that they perform. It's important that individual council members never speak on behalf of the city or the city council. At least as a whole, you are able to speak on behalf of yourself, but it's important that when you do so, that you identify that you're speaking on behalf of yourself and not the council. Often on positions where the city council has taken a position, and for instance, if maybe that council member is in the minority, making it clear that of how the council actually, voted, so that there isn't confusion between what they're saying and the council's at least position. So there's some caveats in there as to how we handle those kinds of situations to eliminate confusion. And then proclamations are issued by the city council as a ceremonial commemoration of an event or issue, and we keep an annual list, and we got to see that in action tonight. And I think Arcata has, most of my cities, it's the mayor who does it all, and I think you guys have a beautiful process where it's kind of shared. So it's something that, I appreciate how you guys have a team aspect to it.
I do too. It's a lot of reading.
Huh?
It's nice to split it up.
It
It's a
is,
lot of
it
reading.
is. You don't have to read it all. So chapter 5 continues to go through prohibited use. We talked about with the elections, and then where we comply with the Public Records Act. So what you have to keep in terms of your records, destruction of records, things of that nature. I just stole the thunder out of my next slide, but just all the stuff that you have to keep under the Public Records Act. Chapter 6 goes over conflicts and liability. Local agency officials are defined by state law. They're required to complete 2 hours of training in ethic principles and laws every 2 years. They're also required to do sexual harassment training and mandated reporter training. City requires that in addition, the council members following receive training. The following officials are also required to receive ethics training, and most of those are going to be required to also get the sexual harassment mandated reporter training, which that's planning commissioners, city manager, I'll add city attorney here too, department directors, some mid-managers, and then the economic development committee. And then depending, on your particular position in the city, you might also be required to do some of those things. So you might have to do the mandated reporter training. So this isn't a list of everybody, but it's kind of like the macro level of who has to do it.
Can
Again,
I do a quick clarification, just since it was on that last slide, and we talked about it, goal setting a little bit, some changes potentially to the Economic Development Committee, if we are able to fund and, the development of an economic development strategic plan in next fiscal year's budget. We also no longer by law would need to require conflict forms, FPPC forms for Economic Development Committee. They used to, long ago, have a role around loans in the city, which they no longer have, and that's why they were originally in that. category. So either way, I think we'll probably be shifting to something else and not be utilizing that committee in the same way anyway, but even if we did, we could remove that section.
And I think that that's an important note because, I mean, I think that we need to think of this protocol manual as a living document, and it's something that as changes are made, we need to kind of continue to keep it up to date and keep touching it. So, I mean, I think one of the goals that we'll have is to kind of take an annual look at it and kind of keep it up to date. And then, so again, we're memorializing a lot of things that are in law so that this is a reference for folks, but that, you know, the Political Reform Act prohibits public officials from using their position to influence government decisions and requires the city to keep their conflict of interest code kind of updated. In addition, state law prohibits the council members from being financially interested in contracts. So we'll have any kind of, we often have discussions about, you know, whether or not folks can vote, and sometimes people recuse themselves. And I think it's important for members of the public to know, just because somebody recuses themselves doesn't mean that they in fact have a conflict of interest. Often we have folks recuse themselves just in an abundance of caution, or when there might be, even though there might not legally be a conflict of interest, but there might be the perception of one, in that effort to kind of be transparent and have a good government that people can trust. Sometimes we do that just to be cautious or to make sure the optics are right. Because what looks like a conflict from a legal standpoint often is not. And then regularly we consult with folks on any of the committees, not just the city council, if they believe that they have a conflict. So any of the committees the city council already knows this, but you know, if any of our other boards or committees or members are ever concerned that they have a conflict, they should talk to the director who oversees that committee, and then they can get in touch with me and we can make sure that they don't do anything that they're not supposed to, and we're following all those protocols. And I think I can personally say, I think, you know, Arcata and the folks I've worked with have been very proactive in doing that. So that's given me a lot of confidence in terms of the compliance. Chapter 7 goes into, you know, kind of, because we're talking about a protocol again, interactions with city staff and what's appropriate and what's not. Again, there's a bit of redundancy in here, but some of this is for emphasis and context. So stating again that the council establishes the policies and priority, but the city manager is going to be the one who does the day-to-day stuff. So this is just a list of some of those stuff that and again, this is city manager does a ton of stuff. The whole book could probably make up the things that the city manager is responsible for, but these are just the high level: enforcing city laws, directing daily operations of the city, preparing and monitoring the budget, implements policy programs initiated by the city council, and generally supervises the administrative affairs of the city. So all that falls under the city manager's purview. That's why I like my gig, because I don't have as many things underneath me. Chapter 7 kind of goes over the city staff takes guidance from the city manager or from their department director. But it also makes clear that city staff do not surrender their right to be politically involved, and employees may privately express their personal opinions without, you know, fear of retribution, and they may register, vote, sign nomination or recall petitions, and they may vote on any of the elections. Again, much like city council, we do have kind of protocols for city staff when they come up, that they make sure that they identify that they're talking in their individual capacity as opposed to their capacity of if they were working, for instance, for the city, to make clear that they're, you know, which hat that they have on for members of the public who might otherwise be confused. So. It gets into, chapter 8 gets into, and we're gonna spend a little time on this one, gets into our city council meetings. You know, they're held on the first and third Wednesdays at 6 p.m. By majority vote. Again, this is an area we want to talk about a little bit later on. And the council members and advisory bodies may submit items to the agenda requests are reviewed and placed on the agenda with consideration for scheduling concerns. So it has to, so folks can ask for something to be put on, but we still need enough time to be able to do the staff work, do it, and also meet the legal noticing requirements. And requests from advisory bodies should be submitted at least 15 working days prior to the meeting. Again, all of this is still subject to the ability to kind of get the work that goes on, because often requests can't be, even if we can hit the noticing requirements, the work that needs to be put in to be able to have a thoughtful staff report, an item, might take more than 15 days. So it's not that that's been ignored. It's just saying that we need the time to make sure that what we put on the agenda is not half-cooked. And then as it goes to public comments, comments relating to the agenda received after distribution of the packet and prior to the meeting shall be distributed to the council, made available for public inspection at City Hall. At the meeting, the mayor calls for public comment after each of the council has had an opportunity to discuss an item. Goes into our time limit, which is 3 minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about what you guys do that, again, I think is really unique to Arcata and I think is a wonderful feature, which is allowing the 15 minutes of public comment in the beginning of the meeting so that folks can maybe get out if they need to and they're not stuck here all night on a long agenda in particular before public comes up later. But that was an issue that when I came in gave me a little bit of heartburn, just because not everybody's given the opportunity to talk during that period of time. And it was a question of whether or not that was those items were continuations of each other versus they were their own unique one. And so, I think that that's going to be part of our conversation tonight, so I'll just kind of give context here. And then chapter 8 is actions at meeting. Council exercises authority through a motion, amendment to a motion, or adoption of a resolution or adoption of an ordinance. For general guidance and parliamentary procedure, the council follows Rosenberg's Rules of Order, which were designed for local government, as opposed to Robert's Rules of Orders, which was not designed for governments. It's a great set of rules, but we do recommend Rosenberg's because of just it's being really designed for local government in particular. But I think it's important to know that it's a guideline. It's not a mandate in the context of we're not also looking to create litigation for the city of if for some reason there's some minor defect in the motion, that becomes a way to get the city in costly litigation and invalidate something. So that's really the rationale behind using it as guidance, but not having it as a mandate. And then the mayor is also currently allowed to establish reasonable time restrictions on presentations. That includes the use of electronic equipment, media, which is in media that requires city equipment is not allowed during public comment. So those are your current rules. Chapter 9, Protocol Administration. The City Council will review and revise the protocol manual as needed. Again, I think the goal on a going forward basis is to do it kind of, annually or at least every 2 years. The City Council will review and if necessary revise it in July following a City Council, election. That's what's, currently in there, but we can do it whenever we deem appropriate. And this one says the city attorney shall assist the mayor and serve as the advisor for interpreting the city council's adopted protocol. I think that I would probably say that should probably be changed. This is one of the changes that we want to recommend. I think the way that we're currently structured, and just the way that it works from a pragmatic perspective is the city manager and the city attorney are a team. And so I think it should be, in my opinion, my recommendation is that it include both positions, because I think that's just functionally how it works in the first place. And the city attorney in this respect, I don't think there's any unique attribute that I have that the city manager doesn't have. So I think that that's one of our recommendations.
Well, I would argue there are lots of unique attributes, but that just the way that the arrangement with the new contract attorney is working we don't necessarily have an attorney at every single meeting, so I think it's more just from a practical standpoint than, yeah. Be great to have it always, but.
Would you mind pulling the microphone a little closer to your mouth? Thank you.
I'm often accused of speaking too loudly, so, okay. So tell me if is that better? Okay. So now we're going to get into, kind of changes. So in terms of changes in the 24 protocol manual that we're recommending, we want to clarify, well, first of all, we want to do a consolidation of documents and resolutions into one. So we want this to be the guiding document for the city, both for the city, council, as well as all other city officials, and the conduct of business, of meetings, and, for the city in general. So it doesn't matter if you're, what board, commission, council meeting that you show up, the rules are essentially the same, and the way that they're administered is essentially the same. Of course, there's going to be different jurisdictions, they have different subject matters, but the way it's conducted would be the same, and the rules would be the same. It would, the resolution establishing format and procedure for council meetings, as well as, as the committee handbook, had been combined into this one. And I think that will eliminate some confusion. For context, the commission and committee handbook was a lot pithier, and not quite as comprehensive as this one. And so I think that will be helpful. Also, we want to make sure that new council members, if we're ever to have any, well, we will have some, but when that happens, or their city officials, when they begin their positions, that department head should, invite them to tour the facilities and meet staff, at least within their relevant jurisdiction. So we want to make sure that that's kind of built in terms of the protocols. And newly appointed advisory body members receive a copy of this handbook. Again, part of the protocol when you come on board. Here's your handbook. Here's how we do things. Let me, do you want a tour? Do you want to look at stuff? To make sure that they get up and running and can operate at a high level, as quickly as possible, and obviously in compliance with law. And then mayor and vice mayors now rotate during the first regular city council meeting in December, or in meetings in which elections results are certified. So we kind of wanted to clarify how that rotation works. I do know that this is an area that you guys might want to have additional conversation, about, term lengths and things of that nature. So I just throw that out in case that's a conversation that you want to have. And then chapter 8, we want to have we'll probably pull up the actual language there and kind of go over your meeting format in general. One of the recommended changes that I would make that I think would help is that we have the regular closed session meeting begin at 5 o'clock, so that you don't have to keep calling special meetings and having separate notices and separate agendas and things of that nature. And then the regular open session meeting beginning at 6. I think that might create a little bit more, might reduce some confusion and things of that nature. So we'll pull up section 8.9 and kind of go over that. Other changes are vacancies and advisory bodies will be posted on the city's website, and any interested member of the public is invited to apply. So it kind of, again, lays out how this application process and vacancy process would happen. And it also makes clear that appointees may not serve on more than one body at a time. If you want to change that is something that you could change. So somebody could be on like a parks committee and as well as a planning commission. But generally speaking, we want to encourage as many people to get involved as possible and have people kind of dig in on their specialties. So unless you're having difficulty filling positions, it's probably not something we would otherwise recommend.
We'll ensure that we still have language. Sometimes we have task forces, and the council has specifically requested a member from several different committees pertinent to that topic. Yeah,
so wouldn't prohibit that, yeah. Each city board, commission, and task force decisions and recommendations determined by at least a majority vote of the membership. And then a designated department liaison appointed by the city manager will coordinate all activities between the advisory body and the city council. From a practical effect, that happens already. It's just kind of memorializing that in the document. It goes through the terms of office for advisory board members, that they're staggered to avoid a complete change in membership at the time, at any one time. And so this would be the recommended terms. And then also, it talks about the fact that the mayor may decrease the amount of time for comment, which will apply to all commenters. This is meant for times when you have maybe more people seeking to speak than there's practical time for, in terms of, you know, what's a reasonable time to conclude a meeting. It does eliminate ceding of time during public comment, and the public would only be allowed to place items on the agenda via comment during regular meetings. So it wouldn't be that you would be able to do it some other way. Again, this is an area where you could have conversation. This is one of the unique Arcata things. Generally speaking, it's only council members or staff who can put stuff on the agenda. And then it designated waiting areas for speakers, and then no signs permitted in this area. That has to do with the cameras, as well as making sure that people don't feel intimidated, making sure we have a intimidation-free, hostility-free opportunity for anybody who's speaking to feel that they can have their voice heard irrespective of what their opinion is. And then also we just want to make sure people can see. So we don't want people with signs sitting in the front row and then everybody behind them just can't see. So signs are going to be allowed. They just have to be in the back of the room and they can't block people from seeing. So pretty simple. And then one of the other changes is each commenter may only speak once during the combined oral and written communication period. We confirm that written communications may not be submitted for inclusion on the agenda. And then the public may no longer remove items from the consent calendar. They can, of course, comment on them, but they wouldn't be able to remove. That would be reserved for just the council. And then presentations no longer would be allowed during oral and written communication period.
There was a question that came up about what we refer to as blue folder items. This is, correspondence that comes in specific to an agenda item after the posting of the agenda, and we would still continue to make sure that those are distributed to all of you prior to that meeting.
Yep. And then the other ones is council members may admonish, reprimand, or censure other council members or any other city official for egregious violations of civic norms or other misconduct. So whether it's the protocol manual violations or whether or not it's otherwise violations of law, it lays out that process and what you would need to go through. In addition, it goes through Government Code 54957.95, where the mayor or the presiding officer of the meeting may remove or cause the removal of an individual disrupting the meeting. This is a newer law that went into effect, and so it just kind of memorializes both for the public and for the council and our committees and boards what needs to happen in order for somebody to be considered disruptive and be removed for a meeting. We hope that never happens. I don't think it, I haven't had it happen yet in any of the city in like almost 20 years of practicing law. Gotten close, but we wanted it there so everybody knew what the rules are. Council members and city officials are discouraged from wearing political attire or bringing political signs to council meetings. Again, the issue is that we want people to feel welcome and willing to share their perspectives and views. Folks wearing any kind of political paraphernalia that identifies them with one political party or one particular candidate that can potentially intimidate or get somebody who has a different political view to feel like that the person sitting at the dais wouldn't be open to what they have to say. So we discourage that at the dais. Doesn't mean you can't do it off the dais. It just means that when you're on here, you become politically neutral and you're on behalf of the city, You're not a Republican, you're not a Democrat, you're not an independent, you're not a Green, you're not anything, you are Arcata City Council members. So with that, I think that we have gone through the PowerPoint itself. I have a few notes that I wanted to go over, and I also wanted to thank Fred for his comments. So I did get to go through most of it. And so I'll try to, so I want to go over a couple things before we dive in. I do want to make sure that folks know that there's definitions in the preamble of Chapter 1.
Can I ask, so before we start digging deep into this, and there's been a request for a quick 5-minute break?
Yep,
So
no problem.
let's just pause and reflect for a minute. Go ahead.
This is the perfect spot.
Okay, I think we're ready to come back. Wonderful. So thank you for that presentation. I think I'm going to open it up for the council to comment. I think that let's take some of the ones that might warrant a little bit more discussion and might be a little bit more hot button items. So Sarah, do you want
I have a really easy one,
All right.
actually. I said this during the break, but I'm going to say it so the public hears it. Can we change the picture because you can't see Meredith's face in it? Okay. And then other really small
I
clerical.
want to be able to choose it.
Other really small clerical thing under 8.6B, it talks about Main Street, and Main Street doesn't exist anymore, so we should
Okay, I
get
can
rid of
remove
that.
that from mine too, because that's what I had also.
And those were just like my two little small clerical things, and now we can take the big issues.
Oh, I have another little clerical one, though, that doesn't take much. It's 3.3. And it says that, the way it's read is that the city provides office space in City Hall, but we don't have office space in City Hall for the councils in another area. So I think we should say that office space will be provided by the city.
I love it.
Oh, and I have a fast one, 3.4, telefax. Are we using those still? Telefax.
We do have a fax machine, but it's fine to take out of your protocol manual.
So I thought maybe we should take it out because we don't have them like we used to. That was 3.4.
I have not a hot button issue, because I know there are a few, but a question for everyone. We do the council and staff reports at the end of the meeting, and I think that's appropriate place for the council reports, but sometimes I feel really bad for staff that sits through sometimes a 3-hour meeting to give a report, and I feel like oftentimes our attention is, we've had, I think Nature was here recently with an important report, and it was after a really difficult meeting, and I just think sometimes they don't get the attention from us and, possibly the public. So I'm just curious what other people think or what is done in other cities, and maybe having the reports at the first part of the meeting just from staff. So
Like it would be like committee, staff, or,
yeah.
And I would agree that we should, with that, but also to put the council reports with that, because I think that's stuff that the public wants to hear, and a lot of times the public has left by that point, because a lot of times it's just like, I'm gonna talk about e-bikes later, and probably, nobody's gonna hear that because it was at the end of the meeting, and so because usually it's pretty quick too. So I would be happy to move that whole item to earlier on the agenda. I would agree with that.
So maybe that, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe that follows up on what I suggested last night, is that we have a lot of things happening, but we don't actually know about them. Well, we do, whatever, whoever knows or not. That we're going to be closing the plaza off to through traffic for farmers market. Right now, it's one-way traffic on Old Arcata Road. All of those things, I think, are interesting for us all to know and for the public to realize, too. And so that was my suggestion when we got and so maybe this report can come differently from city staff or from the mayor, from the city manager.
Yeah, and I'm totally fine with that. I just think that as council, when we do report outs, especially if we're going to do it in the beginning of the meeting before a whole meeting, that we just really be mindful of the amount of time that we're taking to make those reports and keep them concise.
Well, I have a possible problem with that. Not that I don't mind doing it that way, but I'm just wondering, the end of the meeting is also the time where we can, if something has come up, we can request and vote on an agenda item. So to me, like, it's important to have that somehow have that wrap up with kind of that open dialogue, because that's when sometimes those things are brought up. So I don't know how we handle those.
Well, so like on our CEA agendas, we have reports from member entities at the beginning. So it's like what's going on, if we have anything to report. And then at the end, we have an item that is like items for future agendas, where we can make those comments of, if things came up at the meeting or if we want to set something. And to that point, under 8.6, when it talks about adding items to the agenda, it doesn't talk about using the mechanism of like stating it at a meeting and having consensus to add that. And so that is definitely like, I feel like the main mechanism that we as council members use for talking about what we want on the agenda is like consensus during a meet, at the end of the meeting. So I would like in 8.6 to see some language regarding just, agenda items can be requested like during, via email during agenda setting, or, through consensus at a meeting, Or like, I mean, I feel like we've kind of set a rule that might not actually be an explicit rule in there that like at least 2 council members at a meeting want it on an agenda or something. And I don't know what the rules kind of around that are specifically, but like, I feel like that's kind of what it de facto is, but.
Kimberly Gibson.
Yeah, I just wanted to concur, that was something that on my list, is that at the end of the meeting, a lot of people are distracted and ready to go and feel like particularly the staff deserve our full attention and would love to move that forward as well.
Okay, so looking to place staff reports right after committee report.
Yes.
Okay. And there are a lot of different rules. I mean, Doug chime in, but there are a lot of cities that do require, at least one other person or 2 other people or a majority of the board to have an item placed on the agenda. That has not been a rule in Arcata, but I think we have ended up with the practice of trying to get some nods and some consensus at the end of the meeting. So I think working that in is good.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of, this is one of the areas where you guys are different, right? So because you even, like when you go through 8.6, when it talks about on C, members of the public, it says a member of the public may request an item be placed on a future agenda while addressing the city. If the issue is placed on it, we'll notify the requester so that he may plan to attend the meeting. So typically, we want to make it clear that that can only happen by council members or staff, right? So that's the big thing that we want to do. If you guys want to vary that and you want to have it be multiple people, then we would just need to memorialize it, but it would make it difficult to do that then by email or any other method. It would really have to be at a council meeting, because what we don't inadvertently want happening is wind up people bumping into Brown Act violations, because it's basically then you'd only be allowed to talk to that one person. If that one person said no, then you're kind of stuck.
Well, I mean, I feel like people can say whatever they want in public comment, so they can still say, we would like to see, right? I mean, can't the public voice in their public comment, I would like to see this on the agenda, and then...
Oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. I'm just saying that if it gets into this, if you get into a multiple council member placing something on the agenda, it just creates a little bit of confusion. So if we do it, we just need to memorialize that my recommendation is if you go to a multiple council member scenario, that it has to be done at a council meeting, and that we eliminate the email phone call situation, because I think it also eliminates the ability to be accused of like Brown Act violations or things of that nature. So there are lots of cities that do it. I have about half of my cities that probably require at least 2. I don't have anybody who requires more than 2 to place something on the agenda. So of those who do, we just have a rule in place that any agenda item that doesn't come from staff requires 2 council members' approval. And so that's what I would recommend. Or it's any council member can request it, and then it can be via email, basically any form of communication in advance of the meeting.
Well, if what I'm trying to think about, we all work really well together, and we work well with city staff and the city manager, but we won't, all always be in these seats, and it'll, things change, and so we did, have issues in the past that we're trying to really think ahead and protect future bodies. So I'm not concerned about us, but I guess my question was, if it takes, I think I like the idea of it taking 2 people, but if it does, let's say I want an item on the agenda, and so I ask Sarah, hey, would you like to sponsor this with me? And she says no. Well, I can't now go to somebody else. I'm out of luck. So, but then again, our protocol is kind of tough anyway.
And then how does agenda setting fit into all that? Because that's just the mayor and someone else.
So I think if you move items, like I think you discussed about having those items moved somewhere around ceremonial matters or after committee reports, then I think what we would do is exactly, what Councilmember Schaefer said, which is have an item at the end where it talks about future agenda items,
I
or
like
items
that.
for future agendas. And so that's the place in which you'd say, I'd like to do it, and then you just go and see if there's another person who wants to do it. Again, if you want to require two, and you don't want to have it done at the meeting, you absolutely have a legal right to do it. It raises the prospect of running into a Brown Act issue if somebody's winds up inadvertently calling around and saying, hey, I want to put this on the agenda, will you do it?
Well, I think in the public setting, when we're at the end of the meeting, it makes sense to have two people, because if I want to put something on the agenda and nobody else wants to put it on there, then that says something, right? But our, outside of the meetings, we typically, like, I would email the mayor and say, hey, you know, I'm interested in this is why, and then it's up to her to consider it. So in the, and so is this okay? So say I propose something to Meredith and she's like, you know, and this happened to me when I was the mayor, so I'll use my own example. I had a council member, not here, who would propose things to me and I would say, no, I'm not putting that on the agenda. And so then in the meeting, that council member would say, hey, I think this should go on the agenda. And the rest of the council would say, no. But is that okay? That's not a Brown Act. So like you could go for a second try. If the mayor doesn't want to hear you, that's the mayor's prerogative, but then you could still bring it up, right, at the end of the meeting?
You can still bring it up at the end of the
Okay.
meeting. You would not be able to, outside of the meeting, ask another council member.
I think that's the cleanest way,
That's very
that
reasonable.
process
I
of
agree.
doing it.
Okay. So then we would memorialize a rule that would allow two council members to communicate that they'd like to, well, for lack of a better term, sponsor an item for the agenda. And then if it's just so that we all walk through how it would function, if you've contacted somebody and that person says no, that they're not willing to sponsor it, then your only remedy then would be to bring it up under this, what we'll call this new future agenda items, and then to see if anybody at the council meeting would be willing to sponsor it.
Well, yeah, but you could still, just like me as an individual, I just have to go to the mayor with my request, because I can't get a second person because that's a Brown Act. So me requesting directly to the mayor, you know, we do that. I haven't requested an agenda item in a long time. Does that make sense? Maybe you can explain it better, Karen.
Yeah, I mean, I think often this does come up quite a bit, and they're really small items. They're typically ceremonial. Somebody wants a quick proclamation. They talk to one of the council members. The council member emails the mayor, hey, can we get this on the next agenda? It's timely. Here's the issue, and then it goes on the agenda. Now the tricky piece is that our agenda setting is always the mayor, and that's why the requests always go to the mayor and CC to the city manager. And then we rotate a council member through agenda setting so that everybody kind of stays fresh at what's, you know, coming up, and that everybody has a chance to meet with the mayor and myself to set those agendas on a rotating basis. So if the mayor and whoever that rotating council member decides it's not going to fit on this agenda is just getting too long or whatever it is, you know, it might not make that particular agenda. If it's really time sensitive, it might. But so I think that this concept would work well. I think we can work it out where those easy ones that just are time sensitive or come to one council member, not all of you, we can still get on the agenda.
Yeah. So at least what I'm hearing is we would just memorialize it so that it would be a council member can ask the mayor, and then that would be that. So it wouldn't be going to another council member. If it's going to be a council member other than the mayor, then that has to be done at the meeting in public under future agenda items. Is that?
I think that's great.
That's what we usually do.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I think that, absolutely.
Hard. That does not preempt, though, say, for example, you didn't think about it until the meeting and like, wow, this should be on the agenda. You can still do that, even though you have not, okay.
Yeah, no, you could come up with the idea right as that agenda item come up and say, hey, I'd like to put this on the agenda, and see if somebody else would be willing to, again, loosely using the word sponsored with you tonight.
So if we're ready for another topic.
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
we should move on to, let's get 8.7 over with.
Okay, well,
Can I do, before you go into it, Councilmember, just for the public, because we're going through a lot of stuff, and I want to make sure folks know that they're going to have an opportunity they're going to have an opportunity to comment. This is a draft. We're not taking any action to adopt anything tonight. So the comments that we're doing is just trying to figure out what's going to be memorialized. So I don't want anyone to think that you guys are making final decisions that before the public has the ability to talk. So I just wanted to get that out there before we go too far.
So what I wanted to explain one thing. So when I was on the council before, I would sit here at the meetings and I would watch people out in the audience. They really only wanted to speak on one thing. It happened this evening when we had a property owner, well, she was a business owner, and she came and she spoke about the plaza. And so that is how I brought that up, as something that we could have at the beginning after we do certain things. We would have that to allow people not to have to stay till the end of our meetings. Also, you know, our meetings, because when we had Michael Mackey was on the council, he came up with 10:30. That was the end of the meeting. In my past, you know, I had been used to meetings that went to midnight or whatever, and I just couldn't see people sitting in the audience that long if, like Natalie, just wanted to get up and say something quick. So that's where that came from, and now it's part of what we do. But I don't know if we do it correctly, because I always think about it as for someone not to be talking about the same issue twice at the beginning and the end, but is there just to deal with something quick that...
Yeah. So I think that I think you teed it up perfectly for me to have the conversation that I wanted to have tonight about the 2 public comment periods that you have. So as a city attorney, the only thing the thing about it that gave me, so one, I want to say that I think it is a fabulous idea. I wish more of my cities will now still, hopefully some of my cities will now still the idea and incorporate it into their processes. So, and I think it's one of the things that makes Arcata different and great. With that being said, what I worry about is that whoever gets to speak during the first period of time, since it's time constricted, they get the opportunity to speak at the second one, and other people who might have wanted to speak, and I've been at a couple of meetings where that's happened, they're denied that opportunity to speak twice. And so it raises the concern about if this is really public comment, then it really is an item that's probably, the latter item is a continuation of the first, but it's the opportunity to let somebody talk about that single subject and get in and kind of get out so that they can go home and have dinner and things of that nature and not be here all night, as opposed to maybe a more elongated conversation, or when we have a lot of people here on one particular issue, whether it's a development project or a social issue. So, so in my opinion, the way I view this and the way that I would recommend it is that the 15 minutes is an early opportunity. And if you take that, then you get a smaller time period, so you get 2 minutes instead of 3. You can have the 3, but you just have to wait till the later time period to do it, so that as many people as we can possibly get who have that kind of short conversation that they want to have can have the opportunity to speak and then go home and possibly have dinner with their families.
Because in the past, what I noticed, it was that people would, they would go, oh my gosh, your meeting is so long and I have to wait.
Yes.
And they have to go home and feed their children, or they just got off of work. And so that's why I thought it was a valuable situation. And I would like it to continue for the purpose that I thought it was originally started for.
So there is no recommendation that eliminates it. We would not do that. All we're doing is tweak. The suggestion is only that we tweak it so that the first public comment period and the public comment period at the end of the meeting are effectively, they're the same agenda item, just one is a continuation of the other. It's just if you speak during the first 15 minutes, then you don't get to speak again, and you accept the fact that you're going to talk a little bit shorter period of time, so you get 2 minutes instead of 3, and you do that knowing, so that so that if you want to just kind of raise a couple issues and go home and feed your kids, then you have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I would hope that would encourage more people to come and make public comment. I know that I've talked to several people this week that I've encouraged to come in and make a quick public comment about, something and then get out. And so I would hope that this would be able to encourage more diverse people to come and talk about their issues, knowing that, they have like 2 minutes to say what they need to say and then go.
Yeah. But I just want to be real clear, the only legal concern I had with it, if there are two agenda items instead of a continuation of one, is that it's so time restricted and not everybody can take advantage of the first one, and so then we're kind of
So
inadvertently
Are
picking
you
people.
saying, like, I come in, I have my 2 minutes, and I'm gonna talk to you about housing? The housing I don't like or the housing I like? And then my 2 minutes are up. Now I'm gonna just stay here, and I will start my conversation where I ended it on my page, you know, I read this, read that. And now I'm gonna start here and go with the rest
So you only
of
get to speak once during public comment. You only get to speak once, but you get to choose. If you want to go early, you accept the fact that you're going to get 1 minute less so that we can accommodate more people. And if you want to talk longer, then you'll be restricted to the later time frame. And then we don't have the situation where some people get to speak twice and some people who wanted to speak twice only get to speak once.
Well, I think that's the part that we need to really focus on, because that's the spirit of what we're talking about public comment, right? So if we wanted to have two public comment times, then the first one would need to be open-ended, just like the last one is. And so we're just evening the playing field and making it fair by what is appropriate within the law.
But we don't have a time restriction on the last public comment, so we could take people for an hour, 2 or 3 hours.
Right, and I think what Stacy is saying is that if we had two separate agenda items, that we would have to do the same in the beginning too, and we don't want to do that. We never get anything done. We're going to take public comment on the thing as a whole in a little while.
So to be clear, and this is an existing rule, this is not something new. Under 8.7.1, the city's basic standard is to provide 3 minutes per speaker for all business items. So that's just the standard. So there is a time limit that's in there, even for all of them.
I think I was meaning like hours, right? It could be 3 hours at the end, and we'd
Right.
have to allow up to 3 hours at the beginning.
Well, I think, but then if you go further in here, that it says that we can put a limit on it and a time limit. So are we happy, are we satisfied with the beginning part of the conversation? You want to get into the, changing time?
You mean 2 minutes versus 3? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, let's say that there's a topic that we've got a room full of people and we want to make sure that we accommodate them, then should the mayor be able to say, all right, I see 100 people that want to talk. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk. So instead of 3 minutes for this item, I'm going to give people 1 minute or 2 minutes. So, and I think
Yeah, so that's pretty normal. I mean, generally speaking, we get nervous about cutting time less than 3 minutes. The only reason that we can cut it to 2 is in the beginning, from a legal perspective, and feel comfortable about it, is because people aren't required to take advantage of that. It's just there for them if they want to, and we're trying to accommodate a lot of people. That being said, the Board of Supervisors all the time, they operate with time limits for agenda items, and so we're legally allowed to do that. It's just that the cities don't, generally speaking, do that.
And yeah, exactly. And to be clear, I mean, there have been many, many instances where we have had 3 hours. It's just because it says we can do it. I don't think I can think of a circumstance where it would happen because we want to hear everybody. But I don't think we've had 100 people in here. But if that should happen, I'd want to make sure that we had that we were allowed to do that.
Yeah, I think that's been a long time practice for Arcata. I've seen it happen many times where we have lots of people and we make an announcement, we're going to try to get through public comment in 1 hour, in 2 hours. Can I have a show of hands? I mean, that's a pretty common practice for us.
Just to bring up maybe another point, maybe this is a technicality and maybe it doesn't even need to be in this because I feel like there's not a lot to talk about Zoom, but thinking about then if we're continuing this early oral communications piece and the idea is make a quick announcement so you can go home, people already sitting at home should probably not be able to comment during the first part because, right, that it's like the quick announcement, right? And that, so I don't know how other people feel about that, but like, I've seen times where we have 10 people lined up in here for early oral communications, but I have to tell 4 of them to sit down because we have people on Zoom that then again comment later and are just at home. So, I mean, I just, for the spirit of this kind of like make a quick announcement and make your quick point and go home, that maybe we reserve, Zoom. But, and I understand why that might go the other way for folks. So I just wanted to bring that up as a point and see what people thought. But.
Well, I would counter with making sure, since we're only allowing it to be like a one-shot deal and still limiting it to 15 minutes, I mean, could we get everybody that wanted to talk that was in person, and then if there's like 5 minutes left, maybe go to Zoom, or now is it just?
I mean, you could build a policy that prioritizes people in the chambers, and then if there's time left over, then allows that, for Zoom. But then under that scenario, if the folks in the chambers took the entirety of the 15 minutes, then the folks on Zoom would wait until then.
And my only other thought about that too, of just to, kind of say, yes, this is another reason we should do that, is that like, it's pretty easy to be multiple people on Zoom and comment twice if you want to, and not respect that rule. So again, I don't know how many people are busting down our doors to comment at our meetings, but it could happen.
But we're also thinking ahead for the future. I mean, there are council meetings that now are not doing Zoom public comment anymore because of the reach that Zoom has, and you can have somebody mobilize 600 people to come to your meeting. And so I probably shouldn't have said that out loud, but we haven't had that happen. But there are, cities that don't do Zoom comments anymore. And, we are still able to do that. So I think, having the first one be in person only is fine with me. That makes sense. Your logic makes sense. I don't know what Kimberly or Alex thinks.
Not only, but prioritize. And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I like the idea of prioritizing those that are here. We do that in businesses. When you call a business, they take care of the people at the counter first. So that's what I wanted to say.
Do we want, while we're on this section, are there other changes that you are interested in making in your overall order of business, from land acknowledgement, flag salute, roll call, ceremonial, reports by commissions and committees? We will then go to staff and council reports.
So do normally cities have an end to their meeting time? 10:30?
No,
And then
I mean, if they do, it's just kind of a aspirational statement that they're going to try to have the meetings concluded by a certain time, but generally speaking, they won't.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we've had long meetings, and then once we get to a certain time, there's a general poll to see, all right, do we want to just keep going and get it over with, or do we want to pause and reschedule? So I think that's appropriate to just take a read of the room. I mean, if it's 11 and we're fading, then I think it's completely appropriate to say.
Yeah, right now it's 10:30, and that was something that Michael Mackey, when he was on the council, put together because he liked to go home early and go to bed. Anyway, that's what he would say to me. And I felt like sometimes we had developers that would be in the audience, and they would sit through our long meeting, and then he'd say, it's 10:30, we have to go. You cannot do this. You cannot have a developer. We're going to have different doors, different windows, different roof. You can't do that to people waiting in the audience. Since I've been on the council this time, we haven't had that kind of, developers in our audience, maybe once.
No, but we have had where we've had a couple meetings where it's 10:30 and we have to take the pulse and see, and we've known we're close to the end, so we've gone through. I mean, I think it's using our judgment, because it's not just us, it's the public. The public most people have to work the next day too. So, we could essentially put something really controversial at the end of a 5-hour meeting, and that wouldn't be very fair to people watching. So ending at a reasonable time on a workday is, I think, common courtesy.
I know, I agree with it, but I agree but my feeling was then that bothered me is that we could not postpone for maybe 3 weeks because you had a 5-week month, and you're saying, well, we'll take it up, but now you have to wait 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm not complaining about it. I just think we have the option to poll everyone and say, let's finish this item.
So would you prefer it if we maybe soften the language so it just said, we'll make every, attempt to to finish around 10:30, so it's
Yeah.
not considered a mandate?
I think it's appropriate at 10:30 to look around and take the pulse, and, you know, in special circumstances when there's people that are waiting to speak in the audience, and absolutely. And I think that, I don't think I've been on the council at a time where we've stopped a meeting and rescheduled. I think we're pretty tenacious.
You're lucky.
I know. Well,
So the only thing that's on here on 8.9 that I want to just draw your attention to, because we've had criticism about there being inconsistencies, is the land acknowledgement and the flag salute being followed by each other. Was brought up at a previous meeting, and so if you guys wanted to have any conversation about that.
can you repeat what you said? There's a bit.
Sorry. Sorry, sometimes I talk fast. The only thing on 8.9 that I did want to bring your attention to see if you wanted to have any conversation of it, and it's because members of the public have criticized us of being inconsistent by having the land acknowledgement and then the flag salute following right after. So I just want to bring it up as a matter of topic to see if you want to have any conversation about that, you know, and that was generated from comments from the public.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Where else would it go? I guess we could do land acknowledgement, roll call, flag salute, but we're still gonna do both. And, you know, there have been meetings where, yeah, people have criticized it, jeered about it, where it's felt really awkward to read one and go into the other, and to go into the other and then stand up there and not say the flag salute also feels really awkward. So but where is it gonna go? You know, and maybe that's a question to you guys. I mean,
Yep.
do you see or other cities that you're in, what do they do? Maybe you don't have any cities that do land acknowledgements. I don't know.
I don't have any cities that do land acknowledgement. That's another Arcata thing. I only bring it up because we're at this section right now. It's been something that we've heard from the public, so I'd rather have the conversation and then we can just move on.
Do all cities do the Pledge of Allegiance?
I do. All my cities do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I have one city that does an invocation.
Well, and we've also been accused of being an illegitimate government. So, I mean, the accusations will always be there. We're trying to genuinely do the right thing, and maybe we're not doing it perfectly, and it's a work in progress. And hopefully, as time goes by, we will find ways to make it not performative and to do better at that, which is our intention. And so we just have to know that it's not a perfect setup, and we will be criticized, but we're trying.
Should we go down? I think there's a list of like stricken things on 8.7.1. Do we want to go down and kind of touch all of those? Let's talk about seating time. I'm good with striking that.
Yeah, as I've said before, I think that gives people that come to meetings all the time an advantage over people that don't, and people that don't know that you're allowed to do that, don't know that you're allowed to do that, and then they don't do it, and it's not fair. So I don't think we should allow seating of time, and I know plenty of other bodies that don't either.
Do you guys have opinions on seating time?
I don't know, do you want to go first? I don't think we should cede time, personally. I think the person that cedes time should speak. Yeah, well, yes, it happens with Fred a lot, that somebody will stand up, I'm going to cede my time to Fred, so that means he gets 6 minutes instead of 3, and often I think that person that cedes his time should actually give us their opinion and not be ceding their time to someone else.
Or not,
That's
and they
where
just
I
not
come from.
talk, yeah. Kimberly, do you have anything to add?
I guess my thought is if you are seating time and several people do it, then I guess I want to level the playing field and have an opportunity for everyone who came here to have an opportunity to speak. However, if there is nobody else here, I don't really see a problem with seating the time.
It's got to be equal across the board. You can't just say, oh, there's only 3 people here. Fred, you can talk for 20 minutes if you want, let's hang out. Like, no, that's when you go get coffee with somebody and, have a conversation. And this isn't necessarily the place for that.
Well,
so.
I've never noticed that before until I've been, we've been on some conversations, and some of them I'm not in the room for because I have to go in the other room. But there's a lot of seating time, and I just don't think it's appropriate personally.
to Sarah's point, we did have someone they received 20 minutes to do a presentation. And of course, we've discussed that we're not going to be able to do that anymore either. But I guess, if we could put a cap on it so that, you're not going to be able to cede time for 20 minutes or whatever. But, maybe getting an extra 3 minutes on something that you're passionate about and nobody else is here. I'm not quite sure, like, if you could make a rule of, if there are other speakers, then you cannot cede time. Let those people who are here should have the opportunity to speak. And after everyone who wants to be heard has been heard, and I don't know how you would do that, though.
So the way that most of my cities would handle that would be the council, that the speakers are allowed to ask for more time, and it's always up to majority of council as to whether or not to grant more time. So
That's more reasonable. They could say, like Fred says, may I have 5 minutes instead of 2 or 3, whatever he gets. And we're using you because you do it. It happens all the time with Fred, so it happens often. And I can see asking for more time, but not for me jumping up and saying, I'm going to cede my time to Fred.
I know that nobody means well, but I'm just not comfortable. Thanks for being a good sport, Fred, but it just, when we're using him as an example, it feels to me like it could feel like we're making up this rule about him, and so I'm not comfortable using people's names associated with this.
Okay, the gentleman in the audience.
No.
It's the same thing.
No.
I'm sorry.
I
shouldn't have
think
used
that
your
we
name.
need to be consistent across the board. I mean, I think that's a protocol manual. Protocol manual is about consistency. I think that we need to keep things as clean and consistent as possible. And, right now, we only have, and like we've said over and over again, right now is right now, but we are thinking about future issues and future things. And I just think as clean and consistent as possible is appropriate. Does everybody feel comfortable like pausing and taking some public comment? I think we've gotten through some pretty contentious.
Well, I feel like we should wait till the end so they can hear all the things we're discussing
Fair
in
enough.
case there's things that, people want to comment on.
Okay, that sounds good. What's up next?
So I had an idea, a thought, is that we have our land acknowledgement. Is there any way that we could have it on the screen and then not read it? I'm just asking that question. I don't know how the council feels about that, but I've thought about that in the past, and I just thought this is an opportunity to bring it up.
I like having it on the screen. I also like reading it. I think we can do both if it's appropriate.
This might be a terrible idea. I don't know, but I wasn't prepared. I'm just thinking of what Alex said. First of all, with whatever we do, we arrange this through the tribe. So if we make any changes, we need to consult the tribe on it, right? But if we feel like I think what Alex is suggesting is we display it instead of reading it out loud. We could see how they feel if we displayed it and just took a moment of silence and reflection, so people could, I don't know if that sounds really hokey, but otherwise, just putting it on the screen seems weird. So I feel like we either need to read it or we need to have an action associated with it being on the screen. We can't just flash it up there and not do anything.
I think that once we've already started reading it, we can't not read it anymore.
Okay.
Well, I guess, does anybody have anything else on any of 8? Because I would maybe take us to mayor selection and rotation and some questions about that if folks want to. And I have stated this before, and I'll state it again, and I don't know how other people feel about this, or if this is a popular or unpopular opinion. I don't like the rotation. I think it's clunky. I think it's silly. I think it was created to placate somebody years and years and years ago. And I know it was created to placate somebody years and years and years ago. And I think that, like, as a well-functioning board who, like, works with each other often and knows how we operate and knows who's good at leading meetings and who hasn't done it yet and who has experience, who doesn't have experience, that, like, I think we should be able to choose from ourselves. But I don't know how other people feel about that. I don't know. I just the rotation, because I feel like a rotation like this happens naturally anyway, like among most, like with my JPA that I'm on, like this is exactly what just happened. And like the person that has been serving the longest that hadn't served as chair yet becomes chair, and then they nominate the next for the vice chair, and so I feel like this kind of naturally happens anyway, but I don't know what folks think about it.
I have some ideas.
People, like when I talk to community members or like when I went to Civic Well, like talk to other elected officials, they're like, you guys do what? And then also just my one other thing about it, as having been mayor for a year, it was kind of nice for it to be over, but also it's really hard to get a grasp on being the mayor in only a year. And that, like, I think 2 years of mayorship might be better just for developing leadership qualities and developing a board as like a working group of people, and for communicating and reaching out to the community and like other partners. Like I still get emails from like, the state board on this, and hey, Mayor Schaefer, sorry, I'm not the mayor anymore. You're gonna need to talk to this person. And so it is difficult. And, maybe I'll defer to, we've got a whole lineup of mayors here, of just like how that felt, because I do think it is kind of, whatever. And sorry, one last thing. There was a comment in an email from a community member that did say to kind of counteract the clicking and the like favoritism that could exist with this, to make it voted by a supermajority. And I do think that's like appropriate if it is decided then in like a 4-1 vote instead of a just simple majority. So those are my thoughts on mayor selection.
Okay, so I do hear when you've been a mayor, sometimes you feel like you just got your feet wet. But again, to level the playing field and having everybody have the opportunity, how can you get experience unless you give them the opportunity to have the experience? I would suggest, if you want a second shot at the mayor, to run again, and you will be rotated around once again. I'd also like to point out to what you were saying is what one of the constituents wrote in is this rotation system was put in place, I think, to not just because, what was it, to, I don't remember what you said, but I think that it was there for a check and balance so that we could avoid those clicks, so that if somebody disagrees, contrary to the majority, and maybe has a dissenting voice, it would be very easy to mayor them out so they don't ever get a chance to be the mayor. And I speak about this because I am often that dissenting voice, and I do want to have a chance at being the mayor. After I have, time here and an opportunity to learn more and gain more experience. But I think that's what makes up a city council, is that we do offer differing opinions and we don't always have to agree. But my concern is without that check and balance, and I'm not saying that would happen here, but we don't know what future councils will do, that it'd be very easy to excommunicate a particular person because they don't agree with your thoughts. So that's what I want to say about that.
Well, I agree. I think that being the mayor puts you in a spotlight it's tough. It's a tough place to be in, And so I feel like you do get a little more focus on you when you are the mayor. And so I feel like that's the community's chance to see who you voted and how they're leading, right? So if I never get a chance to be mayor, then the people that support me wouldn't really see like how I can do in that hot seat really leading things. So I do think it's it really gives you a chance to see where you are. My question is, because what if, and again, I'm not talking about this council at all, but is there a mechanism put in place so that if I am the mayor and I am a disaster, can my colleagues vote me out? I think that needs to be in place so that, because that would be a really tough thing to do. So the mayor would have to be a pretty big disaster, I think, for the rest of the council to want to bring that kind of attention. We did. And, well, no, he stepped out.
Well, so that's actually what
whatever,
happened before.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that everybody should get a chance, but if the council thinks that they need, if it's not working, can we make a change?
Could we hear from the city attorney and how you recommend handling that?
Yeah, so it's actually in there. That was one of the things that we talked about. We specifically have the government code in there. We're still a general law city. If and when that was to ever happen, then the council could take action. All you have memorialized here right now is your guidelines, your protocols. You still have the ability to vary and do anything that you want at any given time. I think what it does is it lets people know what the expectation is, and if there's a deviation to it, it probably shines a brighter light on it. So.
Yeah, I like the rotation. I'm happy with my 1 year. What month is it? No, just kidding.
That's fine. I was just bringing it up, and I'm glad that I'm glad to hear from you guys, and I do appreciate these viewpoints. But it's fine.
I do think that we this year are in an interesting position in that we have the person that's technically up for rotation next. The language is a little gray, right? And so I think that we should change it to in like this period that they were elected in. You know what I mean? Like, because Alex has obviously been mayor before, but she hasn't been mayor since she's been elected this time. So I think we should kind of make sure that there's some clarity around that.
Yeah, I'll just share, when this was instituted, the concept was at least contiguously. So if you took a break, then you started over in that rotation, as though you had never been mayor before. But if you did 2 terms, then you might step aside to, then the idea is if you did 2 consecutive terms and you just happen to come up for rotation, then it would likely go to the next person. We haven't had that happen yet. This is probably, actually, it's not ancient. It's only like 5 years. So I think we've only rotated 4 or 5 times, Bridget? I don't know, but.
I think we rotated like four times.
Well, in 1 year, yeah, we did.
But no, I just want to be clear that I'm happy with the rotation, but I'm excited to see everybody in here in a mayoral position. And
Well, I'll just go back. In the 70s, when I was in the council, I was the mayor for the 4 years. And so when it was over, it was Dan Hauser became the mayor. It was so hard. You get so used to calling for the question. I know, it's really hard. And then the only way I could concentrate not to, always be, doing that is I would bring my knitting and I would sit and I would knit. So I was not doing that. And then people would say to me, why are you so unhappy? Because you're always looking down. Because I was trying to break that habit. It was a hard habit to get rid of. I probably still do it, but not intentionally. I've had a lot of time since then to break it.
Could I ask you to repeat that part? I'm sorry, I missed some of it, about when somebody's coming up for 2 contiguous terms.
Yeah, it's actually already in the manual. It says the member with the most continuous time in service. So the intent is if you did 1 term and then you took a whole term, let's say you took 4 years off and you came back, then, and let's say you did serve mayor in that first term, that part is done and behind. If you're reelected after a 4-year break, after a 2-year break, you start over in that rotation as though you've never been mayor before. And I think it's captured. I mean, we can clarify it more, but it does say a member with the most continuous time of service on the council. Now, if you did, because, for example, Councilmember Schaefer brought up, she wasn't ever supposed to be mayor. And here she is now sitting mayor, done being mayor halfway through her term, or a little bit more than that, But in that case, you could have, if in that situation, well, I guess in this, that's a bad one. But in that situation, if she was reelected after 4 years, she would stay in that rotation, right? And probably be next at that point. But now that she has served, she could run again. And potentially, if there was somebody else, let's say, I mean, it really only happens if you end up with a turnover probably of 3 council members at a time, mathematically. But that did happen, right? And so that was the situation that would have resulted in that. If that situation were to happen again, and then, we added 1 or 2 more people, You would just, I mean, the whole intent is to try to let everyone be mayor for one part of their term. So, I mean, I think, and it says in here again that this is just, in essence, guidance for you. So, you know, if a situation came up that we did not anticipate, you know, I would hope that a future city council would take that into consideration. And we've had lots of people that don't want to be the mayor either. They
Right.
don't want that spotlight, and that's okay.
And this probably is in here, and maybe we should put in the protocol manual, if a meeting goes past 8:30, we have to have pizza delivered, because my brain is stopping. But so in the example of somebody in the middle of a term, if you should be able to serve a full term, I guess, a full year. So like if you become mayor midway, do you get a chance to, yes, okay, good.
Stacy was like mayor for a year and probably a few months, you know?
Okay.
And so like she took over in, I guess it was like August or something, and then you served the full mayor term from that point, so.
So, I mean, that is something that we could probably further clarify in the protocol manual, that it's a complete year, not an incomplete year.
But just to be clear, I'm sorry, we're talking about this forever, but it's still like the it's still, even though it's a rotation, it's still a suggestion. So maybe it's my turn to be mayor, and the 4 people sitting next to me are like, they could still say no, and they could still not vote me in. So it's a suggestion, and it's what we've done, but it doesn't have, you know, there's still you could still not be mayor.
It's the protocol.
That being said, I really am looking forward to everybody having a chance. There's like really, I mean, there's some pretty cool things that the opportunities that come to you, and I would really want everybody to have a chance to be able to experience that. The goods and the bads, so.
And were we going to further discuss the removal of somebody who is an absolute disaster, or what we have already is?
Well, I think that what you have already is sufficient. We can add some additional language that just further reiterates that a mayor can be removed at any time by a majority of the council. It's kind of
A
encompassed in that last
supermajority or a
one.
majority? Does it have to be like?
I mean, as it stands right now, it would be majority, because it would go down to this last paragraph that says, a majority of the council retains the authority to disregard the process and select any member of the city council for these positions. That would apply to removal as well. We can clarify that remains.
It's the same as with the city manager. The majority of the council can remove the city manager.
Well, and I think, I don't know if this was what you were getting at, Kimberly, but in the past, we were wondering, like, does the council have the power to remove a council member? Like, again, we can use me as the example. And what we've learned is no, and it wasn't just that our protocol manual wasn't tough enough. The only way to get rid of one of us is to not be reelected or for a recall by the public.
Or quo rento, which only happens in the beginning. So there's only three or felony conviction. So there's 4 ways. Hopefully none of those happen.
But we can add language to that effect if we didn't already into the section where we talk about censure, you know, sort of options around that. Yes. Removal from committees and removal from.
So typically when it
leadership
happens,
positions.
just to draw the public's attention to it, it would happen related to the censure provisions. I have it in my notes where those are at, but probably easiest just to. Are you going to bring it up on the screen? So that's 8.14 under decorum. 8.14, 8.14. 14. Sorry, bad habit of mine.
Is it possible to get that?
It's packet page 151.
In the final version, we'll have page numbers.
Yes.
So this just outlines basically admonishment, reprimand, and censure, which are the main methods that you have under the law to punish a sitting council member. There is obviously removal from office if it's a non-elected official.
This is where we could add in a section around removal from other liaison appointments and/or positions of leadership within the council.
Yeah, we can add additional language there if you'd like.
Yeah, so we can minimize the person's exposure, but they can't take their seat away.
Just thank you, everybody, for your very thoughtful contributions. I'm learning lots. I appreciate it. Really, no.
Doug might have some more.
Or Karen, either one of you might have other thoughts? I went through all of mine.
Yeah.
No, I think that we've covered the main ones that I thought needed some additional comment.
Would you be able to throw those up on the screen again? I tried to make notes on the ones that you highlighted. You said most of them, or did we cover all of them?
No, we've covered all of them. I wanted to make sure that we went over the public official discipline, which was in 8.14, admonishment, reprimand, and censure. So those, we've talked about a little bit about that, and then we're going to add additional language in there about the removal. We'll also add the removal section to the provision that we were looking at before.
I'm sorry, I have one more quick question. There's like a very small piece on resignations. I mean, there have been a lot of resignations in the last couple of years. And do we need to clarify like appointment versus waiting until the next election season, or is that up to the discretion of the council? It's government code. Does that need to be spelled out in here?
It is spelled out in California Government Code. It is the discretion of the council, depending on the time of the resignation of the member. You have different options. I have seen council protocols that do favor one over the other, i.e. they favor appointment because I think it's, kind of quick and can happen, with the lowest cost, or they really favor moving to either a special election or they wait till the next general election because they believe that's most democratic. So if this council had a
Yeah, I think it really depends on like the time when it happens. So I think that just leaving it, I just want to make sure that I just got it out there. So
Yeah,
just
so we
leaving
can-
it be like go to government code is fine.
We can further clarify that it's discretionary and that we regurgitate other areas of the government code in here, so maybe that's another area that we'll add just so that this is a more comprehensive document.
Is everybody okay going to public comment? All right, let's take public comment.
Okay, hi. My name is Joanne McGarry, and three things. The land acknowledgement and the Pledge of Allegiance, maybe switching the order might be considered. See how that goes, and as this protocol manual says, you can make changes as soon as you approve it, so that's that. Secondly, staff reports at the beginning of the meeting is really helpful. I think I've mentioned before at this time, when I give second public comment and the staff report hasn't been given yet, I don't have the opportunity to learn from that staff report information that I might want to comment on. So I think letting the staff give their reports early lets them go home early so that they're bright and fresh at work the following day. So I really do think staff reports should be made earlier in the agenda. Also, just being flexible in the agenda. There's been times, whether it's the county or the city of Eureka, I've seen where they've moved items at the beginning where the mayor will say something like, we have, does anybody object to, or can we propose that we move such and such an item to earlier? I think we actually even did that with the ceasefire resolution. So, you know, flexibility is a good thing. My final thing is about public comment. I really want more people here. I don't want to be standing up here all the time, although I love it in many ways, but I want people's voices to be heard. Like I said earlier tonight, you know, the citizens are an equal part of this thing. Sometimes if I talk twice because people are sharing with me and they're not coming to the meeting, and I just want to share with you what I've heard, so that, you know, because I feel like I'm a conduit in that regard. So I believe that within reason, allowing people like me who come all the time and there's not a huge crowd, and I do step aside and let other people speak if there's a lot of people. So I just think that is a good thing to allow people to speak twice. Learning about the flag issue just tonight makes me really want to speak to that issue. I was able to speak to it because I heard about it before I got to speak. But I think there's a value in letting the public speak at the beginning, and if they can go home and eat their dinner, maybe they can't call in if they've already spoken. But if I'm staying around and I'm hearing anything, I think there's good balance of voices to be heard in letting a person speak a second time. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate that. I wanted to address the standard of best practices and ethics. And basically, I learned about this decades ago as an employee at the University of California, Santa Barbara. But, you know, what happens is there's a lot of things that pop up that, you know, aren't really on this, you know, and I faced it at the university and you faced it here. And I want to bring up an example of that. You know, some time ago, you basically got a lot of information from the public saying, hey, we want to speed up the process with the general plan and the gateway as far as our you know, plan commission. And so immediately after you made that, we had a meeting, and I think Fred remembers this one because we were all prepared, the public, there wasn't very many of us, and all of a sudden the rules were changed that we weren't going to be allowed to speak. And what happened at that meeting also was that we changed it to a special meetings, and the word special to me means it doesn't happen very often, but then it continued week after week, month after month, so the public got shut out from the normal meetings. We couldn't respond to just like the way that we're doing tonight. So to me, that was definitely an ethic violation. It's like, I don't see how we could have continued like that. And I was just waiting for somebody like our city manager. I mean, we brought this back to you in the beginning and said this isn't right. And it went on for months and months. And finally some women, thank God for women, called in, you know, in the evening after months and months and said, this is totally illegal, you know. And then after they said that, you know, the Planning Commission quickly went back to regular session, you know. So that's my example of, for my ethics, that it crossed the line, and you know, that was on you. So I'd also address what was brought up tonight about the rotation, and don't take this personally, this is an article in the New York Times, but basically what they said about, you know, government, people that run for office in general, that, you know, we get some really excellent people, and they pointed out Lincoln as an example, but also it attracts people with certain personalities, kind of narcissistic, ones that want, you know, the power, and it's hard to give it up. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings. So I think it's very helpful that you actually do rotate, and you know, they've done studies in Europe on this where actually people that were just not elected were just brought in to run the place, and it actually worked out a lot better that way from the standpoint they weren't attracted to power.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Council. I've sent in my written comments, so I'll be brief. brief on some things. If the goal is to have one document for all officials, it needs substantial editing, in my opinion, but it can be done, and I think that's a good consideration. In general, you're a great council. You're cohesive, you're nice, you're fair, but in looking at these protocols, think of it also in terms of a council which is more divided, as we've seen in the past. In terms of removing a mayor, I would propose that it be a 4-person vote, because as Councilmember Stillman and I have both seen, and many other people, there's often been a 3-2 split in the council, so the 3 people could eliminate the mayorship on the other 2. In general, the changes that have been suggested are good to keep things running smoothly, but have the potential of diminishing public input and have a potential of abusing the process. Not this council, but hopefully no council in the future too. So watch out for that. The public can no longer remove items from the consent calendar, but can comment. Generally, we haven't been receiving a period for commenting before the vote, so that'll be looked at. The notion that of having people who are here comment in the beginning over people who are at home, I would defer to legal counsel on that. I think that may not be possible because they could be handicapped at home. There could be all kinds of reasons. It's a form of discrimination. One thing that's important, the protocol manual and in the presentation stated that the public comments after the council has commented. Often we're asked to comment before the council has discussed things, which I don't like because we don't know what you're thinking. Okay, again, I've got written comments. I can send some more in. On the seating of time, I am not against ending the seating of time. I'm actually surprised that more people haven't abused it. I would request that the line members of the public may not see the time for comments. To prevent unfair domination of meetings by regular commenters, remove that section. I studied this in January. I talked to the city manager about this. I have a list in my written comments. Curiously, the California Political Practices Commission allows seating of time. City of Santa Cruz, Berkeley, San Francisco. The one thing that I request, the Planning Commission meetings often had a single agenda item on the menu that covered a variety of things. I think that violated the Brown Act, and the public had 3 minutes to comment on things that took 2.5 hours to speak. That needs to be corrected.
Thank you, thank you. Anybody else in person, public comment? Is there anybody on Zoom? Okay.
Yep, first online is Lisa. Go ahead, Lisa.
Good evening, council members. I want to first ask the council to consider who your Zoom commenters may be. Older folks, people with disabilities, people without cars, students who are studying, people with children, caregivers, people who are out of town, and others who simply cannot or do not feel comfortable coming down to City Hall. Additionally, Zoom rules in terms of environmental impact. I am here to comment on the timing of the public comment period for items on the agenda at both the Council and Planning Commission meetings. I believe that the public comment period should be received well before significant commission or council deliberations, perhaps right after or a little bit after questions of staff. As a citizen involved for about 30 years, I have noticed in recent years that public comment for items on the agenda have gravitated habitually towards the end of deliberations. The perception or reality is that minds have already been made up and that decision makers are anxious to move forward with their decision regardless of what comments may be heard at that time from the public. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
All right, it looks like we have one more. Jim, go ahead.
Hello to staff and council. I do
reiterate a lot of Lisa's comments.
Are you still there, Jim? I'm sorry, I think we lost you.
Go ahead, Jim.
Now, can you hear me again?
We can.
I think I got muted again.
I'll start your
All
time
right, so
over. Go ahead.
Appreciate
Jim?
again. I just got muted again. All right, can you hear me now?
We can.
All right, can you start over because I'm not doing it. So, all right, so we'll start again. All right, so I don't believe you should eliminate Zoom from early oral communication. I think if you decide to prioritize in person, that's fine. I just don't think you should eliminate it altogether. And there are a number of reasons. I think both Brad and Lisa brought those up. And I just want to make sure that the new policy on early oral communication to just speak once will not be carrying over to business items. I don't believe it should be. We'll still get our time to speak on those. I think it's important and it's valuable for anybody to speak there. If you come just once or you come frequently to meetings, everything is a good contribution to the process, and I hope it'll be looked at in the future that way. I do support council members that had the majority of continuing with the idea of a mayor, vice mayor rotation. It just seemed kind of wrong at this point in the random time to bring up the idea to stop that. I didn't quite understand it, but I am glad that most of you feel like it's a valuable process to continue. And I do believe that community members should be able to pull consent calendar items. I don't know if you need to be alerted ahead of time. I realize you probably consider it some slowdown in the process, but there are things on a consent calendar that really deserve attention. And I don't think it's always the decisions made well as far as if something should be discussed further. I think you should have a further conversation about that and really, decide if you just want to eliminate that altogether. To me, it seems once again, it's like you're kind of already making this decision that the people that are speaking and wanting to pull something like that are wasting time, when in fact, it might be an item that really does need further discussion. Yeah, well, that's about it. Anyway, thank you. And I do appreciate my opportunities to speak.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else on public comment?
Call in user 1, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, okay. This is Lisa. I'm calling to comment on early oral communication. I really think that you should be creating opportunities for free speech and to expand public comment, not be trying to curtail people's ability to speak. And I really think that you could expand the public comment for, like, say 20 minutes, and then if you had 10 people who showed up to speak, everyone would get 2 minutes, and that's only 5 minutes more, and people could be able to go about their lives, go home and have dinner and whatnot. I also think that people at home should be able to comment because of what Lisa B. said and others. It's discriminatory to, people who are handicapped or people who are just afraid to come to City Hall because of COVID, or they have kids at home or are caretakers, as Lisa said. I also think that I was a little alarmed by this language about people engaging in disorderly or boisterous conduct, including utterances or snapping fingers even, some of that could be disruptive, but we've had lots of council meetings in the past that were a little bit boisterous, but nothing that, that should cause concern. We've had Justice for Josiah meetings, agenda items, the McKinley statue, the sanctuary measure. We had students show up, and college students can be pretty boisterous, and but that's part of living in a college town. And so I think there needs to be, before you curtail people's speech, whether it's holding up a sign, and I agree that lady who held up the sign behind someone who asked her not to do that was disruptive. But we should be able to hold up signs. Seniors have brought balloons to the council meetings. People have snapped. There needs to be a little bit of, there needs to be a little bit of tolerance for people being a little bit boisterous and maybe even interacting a little bit with you guys, but not so disruptive that it makes the meeting, hard to continue. So I'm a little bit leery of some of this language that's in there. But anyway, I will write you a letter about it, and I appreciate your efforts to. Oh, also the seating of the consent calendar. The public should be able to pull items from the consent calendar. If we don't have that ability, then we can't speak out about items of concern to us if one of you haven't pulled an item
Thank
from
you,
the
Lisa,
consent
for your
calendar.
comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else on Zoom?
Nope.
All right. And now, because of you, I'm going to call this my precious for the rest of my term. Thank you so much. Let's, if you don't mind, let us revisit the consent calendar, because I think that we've had a lot of comments. I just want to reiterate that if the public can't pull items off the consent calendar, when the public pulls items off the consent calendar now, they've got their 3 minutes to make a comment, and we don't really have to respond or have a staff report. So it's really nothing different than if nobody pulls anything off the consent calendar, people can still line up and make public comment on any item. So really nothing changes. Also, in the past, I've had people email me concerned about something that was on the consent calendar and ask me to pull it off or have a conversation of it, and that I'm absolutely fine to continue to do. I think that, the purpose behind the consent calendar is things that have already been budgeted for, have things that have already been discussed, or one of our goals, and so it's just it doesn't need to be like a huge thing.
I would like to champion for keeping the ability for the public to pull consent items. I've known sometimes that I was actually enlightened and hadn't thought of, particular things that otherwise I wouldn't have known about. So I wanted to say that. And I want to talk about other things, but I think I want everybody else to have an opportunity to weigh in on the consent calendar.
Yeah, but even if they don't pull it off, they can still come up and make public comment about that exact item. And then if you're enlightened, so let's say, there's an item on there's consent calendar. Nobody wants to pull anything off. Then we open it up to public comment, and then somebody can say, I have a comment about item F, and then they make this comment, and which is what would happen anyway. And then if you were so enlightened by that comment, you could say, thank you. And then you could say, all right, that brought up a good point. Can we get a staff report, or can somebody, explain it a little more? So that still is a complete.
Could I ask clarification? Would that limit them then on other topics if they chose to use it for the consent calendar?
No.
Okay, great. Sorry.
And like structure, right? We'll read the consent calendar. We'll ask for public comment on the consent calendar. Then we will ask, does staff or a member of the council would like to pull an item from consent, right? Because if you set it up that way, whether or not you're hollering out E from the audience and we say, okay, let's approve A, B, C, and D. Okay, let's talk about E. Give me your 3-minute comment. It really isn't different. It's the same amount of time to comment. You're just doing it at a different time. And you're not, because it's difficult to, come up, say in the microphone which one you want. Okay, now sit back down. Now come back up again, make your comment. And I'll just add that to kind of echo your point, Meredith, that a very wise county supervisor shared this with me, that it's the perfect opportunity for us as council members to have that conversation with members of the public. If something is that important to a member of the public, that they reach out to their council members and say, hey, you should pull this from consent. That kind of shows that two-way commitment from me to my constituent of oh yeah, I do think that's an important, valid concern. I hear you. I'm going to pull this item from consent so we can talk about it publicly because community members have been concerned about it. So I support not letting members of the public pull consent. And I know the Board of Supervisors doesn't let members of the public pull consent because it does, I actually think, open that conversation between council members and the public outside of the meeting. And as long as we keep that structure of, read the consent, call for comment, and then pull items, everybody will still be heard on the items that they want to hear, and council members can pull items as they wish to.
And I feel like maybe I've taken a stupid pill, and I apologize. I've done 1 year. And so I'm learning from you. I'm still lost in how they wouldn't lose that opportunity or time, because it sounds like you're getting
Yeah.
to what I'm getting at.
Let's walk through the process, and I think Councilor Schaefer did a good job. The only thing that she left out was if you pull, let's say that you get to the point where you pull, so you've called for the consent calendar, you've taken public comment on the consent calendar, you were moved by it, or somebody has requested it, and then you as a council member at their request decide to remove something. They would have had an opportunity to talk on the consent calendar, and then once you pull it, they would have another opportunity to talk on the item that has then been pulled. Because the second that you pull it, they're not limited because they went and talked about the consent calendar generally. They now have another opportunity to talk about that particular item because it's been pulled.
So it's actually more time.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
I'd say the other reason I think this has come forward for a lot of other cities is that often people, and we see this, pull an item from the consent calendar because they just want to make a small comment. So in this case, those members of the public could come up and say, I just want to make a comment on item B, and then it's not pulled for a separate vote. It kind of keeps you flowing, but it allows them to make that comment ahead of time.
Does anybody want to revisit anything else before we move on? Go ahead, Stacey.
Yeah, well, there was a few things that I just wanted to address from public comment. So one, well, the one I want to circle back to is the idea of I just would like to get your guys' opinions on if we're talking about removing a position, somebody from mayor, should it be 3-2 or like it couldn't be 3-2? Should it be a supermajority? So I'd like to come back and talk about that, but the other things that came, responses to what I was hearing in public comment. We already talked about the consent calendar. Regarding removing people that are boisterous, we have the power to do that right now, yet it's never been done. So I just want to be really clear. We can do that. It's not something, when you do that, it tends to cause more of a commotion. So that's why you'll see speakers go over their time sometimes, that you'll see heated things happening. It's the mayor's job to give the warnings, to calm things down. The mayor has the power right then and there to ask the police to remove them, but we've never done that. So unless it was a really extreme circumstance, we're not going to do that. So I just want to be clear. It's not like we put this in there so that next week, as soon as somebody snaps their finger, we can kick them out. Yeah. That's not the spirit of this.
Can I add just one thing to that?
Yeah.
Because I want to make it really clear, because I don't want the public to be confused. The addition just regurgitates California law. We actually didn't add anything in there that's new, that's not just state law. We just put the state law that's in there. And it's not geared towards people snapping their fingers in the back. It's not even about people having signs. Like we didn't change the rules because we had a whole bunch of signs. What we did change the rules is to say that the signs have to be in a position that they can't block people from seeing. So you can still have the signs, you just have to be at the back of the room, not in front of people who are trying to see. So I just want to make that.
Well, then the last thing, and this might not be popular, but it's just the reality of it, is that yes, the public needs to be heard and should be heard, absolutely. But that is also our job for phone calls and emails and all that. There are lots of times that I will engage with a member of the public far more than I will get to engage with my colleagues, because I will have an hour meeting with somebody over coffee and discuss something. I can do that with one council member, but not all of them. So at some point, we have to have time. It can't just be a meeting that's public comment. We have city business to conduct. We have discussions that we need to have, and we can't have them any other place than here. So it is also our meeting to actually hear from one another and discuss. So time, that is important too. Yes, the public comment is important, but there has to be a balance. So that's what we're always striving to do, is create that balance. But I think sometimes people forget that we can't talk to each other. And so this is our time to talk to each other, and that also is very important.
I wanted to address both of those things. First, the removal of a mayor, I would like to propose a supermajority. And okay, and then the other one is I would like to recant my prioritizing those who are here. the point was well taken. There are people who, it's not by choice they're not here, it's because they can't. They don't drive at night. They have children, and they, we don't have on-site childcare. So there's so many reasons. One reason I know that Spanish-speaking residents don't come here because they can get at home and have somebody help translate for them, which would be very disruptive here. And unfortunately, we need to figure that out too, because we need to have equity. But that's why they don't come, because they don't understand. And so they have somebody at home who can do that translation. And then, of course, you have the older adult community, so many reasons. So yeah, I just want to recant that maybe prioritizing people who can come here is not fair. And I want to make sure that we are equitable to everyone.
I'm actually fine with that. I think that, I'm just wondering, as far as Zoom goes, I know that, yes, there are a lot of cities that are now not doing Zoom anymore. Is there any kind of laws or bills that are coming through that have the possibility of ending the Zoom option, like, altogether? Because I think, while we have Zoom, I'm totally fine with taking the first 5 in person and going to Zoom. As long as people aren't speaking at both things, as long as it's a one-shot deal, I'm totally fine with half of it being Zoom. I just want to know that eventually we'll probably have to revisit it, because I've heard that coming down the pipelines are bills that are going to end Zoom.
So there's no viable bills that I'm currently aware of that would be targeted at ending Zoom. I do represent a few of the cities, one in particular, who has ended Zoom because they got bombed. And in that situation, it was about 2 or 3 hours of racial epithets. And it was directed at, police officers of color and things of that nature, and it was very personal in nature. And there was 2 or 3 people that showed up in person, and then there was a bunch on the phone. And so it has been our policy following that to not recommend Zoom for public comment, to utilize it as a method for people to observe, but not as a method for communications, at least not without some form of disability or some kind of request for a special accommodation. So that's the experience that we had that has jaded and kind of colored our experience, and so half of my cities decided that's it after that. So my recommendation is to not have Zoom for public comment, but it comes from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think that here in Arcata, we are very lucky that most of the people here are very reasonable and have legitimate things to say. So I appreciate that. And, for the 15-minute open time period, I get it. I'm fine to do the first 5 in person and then go to Zoom. And as long as it's, that's your one-shot deal. And then, we can revisit Zoom the next time we go through the protocol manual. I'm totally fine with that.
And I concur. Arcata is unique, and I feel like if it's not broke, let's not fix it. And my understanding is we will be able to revisit the protocol manual annually, so we can tweak it and make those changes accordingly if that became a thing. I'd like to think it won't become a thing here in Arcata.
No, absolutely. So the goal is to come back once a year. And again, I just tell you what my recommendations are and why I have the recommendations. Your job is to help us keep Arcata Arcata. So absolutely, you're 100% correct.
Well, and we can bring the protocol manual back at any time. It doesn't have to be in a year. And I would argue it probably wouldn't be folks from Arcata that ruined it from us. I don't, and that's the problem, is we can't control those outside forces. You know what I mean? It's not, typically in those meetings, it's not, I don't know. If it was Arcata, I wouldn't think it would be our people doing that, but it could very well be some people from other states who don't like what we're doing, or organizations. And that's the problem with our little local meetings being accessible to people all over the world. And that's where it gets muddy. But we haven't had that problem, and maybe we should quit talking about it so we don't have it. Now we're going to have it.
Alice, do you have one more thing to say, and then I think we can move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so it was brought up, staff presentation, public comment, and then the council makes comments and decision. Is that how? That was you brought that
That's
up.
Rosenberg's rules. I mean,
That's how it is,
the,
okay.
the guideline, but you don't have to.
I'm just
Are we
asking.
talking about like the timing of when we take public comment? I think that we've done it like a lot of different ways, just depending on kind of the topic and the read of the room, I feel like.
So traditionally, how it works is there's a staff introduction of the item. The mayor then will bring it back, and then council members will ask questions if they have questions, because you don't want to form a decision until you've gone out to public comment. So that's why we keep it at questions. Sometimes they have questions that come afterwards, but then it goes out to public comment. You take in public comment, then council comes back and has a discussion which helps you form your ultimate decision, and then you make your decision following that.
No, I agree with that, but anyway, I was just dealing with thinking what someone maybe.
All right, so I think that, what is the next step? What do you need from us, city attorney? Like, what do you need from us?
Yeah, I think we'll just capture, I think your thoughts from this evening. We will bring it back to probably your next meeting for you just to go through one more time to make sure we captured everything.
That's one of the recommendations.
So I'm excited about that case in point, staff reports, moving them closer. Poor Chief Bart Silvers has been patiently waiting for us, and so this is going to be a good thing.
All right, well, thank you for that presentation. Thank you, council. Those were some hot button items to work through, and I think that we did a really good job. I'm looking forward to seeing what you bring back to us and implementing this protocol manual. So let's go just a little bit longer, Chief. Let's do some oral written communications. We all know that the city appreciates our input, so let's line up. 3 minutes.
I'll be really quick. I've been thinking what I want to say today based on a lot of recent stuff that's happened in our city and decisions made by the council, et cetera. And indigenous was a word that I was really thinking about a lot today. And one of the things would be really great in a climate changing and adaptation way is to have indigenous plants instead of lawn on the City Hall, front of City Hall, native plants. So I think that would be really nice. Indigenous people have made a lot of comments recently about place and technology and things like that. And I think we need to honor the indigenous people of this area beyond a land acknowledgement. And I've always strived to promote getting Arcata Plaza as the Arcata Peace Plaza, but somebody spoke earlier about name back and Houdini. Sacramento just sold back some land in downtown Sacramento to the Miwok people, and maybe we need to really start looking at land back and name back, and starting with the plaza, and maybe giving that back to the Wiyot people. And from there we can, create a community and honor the indigenous who, by the way, value their elders. I'm an elder now, and I'm appreciating and not appreciating sometimes being felt invisible or not respected. And I think the indigenous respect for elders is something that we can learn from. Traditional knowledge and respect for their elders, respect for the elders here in our community. So that's what I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to bring up the sea level rise. That was probably something you talked about last night, but I wasn't there the whole time. This is something I've been talking about for quite a while, and specifically the Coastal Commission. And I just want you guys to be aware again that when you approve the phase 1 of the wastewater treatment plant, there was quite a few rules that the Coastal Commission attached to that requirement that you needed to do. And one of them was, there was a separate letter that was from our city manager asking for the levee improvement, which is building up wider and higher, and they denied that. So I don't think when you even voted, we were even aware of that. And also, phase 2 was last night, was on your agenda. I wasn't around, I didn't stay for that, but phase 2 is levy enhancement. So this is another thing that's going to have to go, I assume, in front of the Coastal Commission. And also, David gave a presentation on the local coastal element, updates to that. He gave a presentation that showed Lower G Street, and there was going to be levy enhancement there. So those are all like super big issues that, you know, as far as what, I'm not an attorney, but I've read their rulings, and I don't think it's going to be very favorable to doing those activities. So maybe this is something we need to know, like as far as what the outline for, you know, as far as we have our EIR, you know, that's going to have a final EIR that I think was maybe May or something like that. So what's the sequence as far as when the Coastal Commission is going to get involved in this from the standpoint, does it trigger it because we haven't updated our coastal element since 1989? That's one, or is it because of our general plan 2045 and we're increasing in the coastal zone development that's going to go to 7 stories? Is it 2 times we're going to the Coastal Commission? So I'm not clear myself. I'm just trying to learn this process. And I don't think you guys know either. So it should really be spelled out exactly all these steps that we're taking and when possibly these votes are going to happen. You also had a grant that was a requirement by the Coastal Commission as far as sea level rise, on where that plant might have to be relocated in the future and all the adaptation. And I think that report is way out in the future there, but it would be nice to get an update exactly when all of this is coming and when we're going to find out about these things and just be much more knowledgeable. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening, council members. I won't speak on anything that was on the agenda specifically. I want to thank you for your careful, thoughtful consideration of everything that you said tonight. I'll mention on arcata1.com there's an April Fool's issue, 4 or 5 articles, plus the April Fool's articles from last year. There's an article about a couple in the early 70s in Oakland who want to downsize from a large house. They like to move to a nice condominium, but they don't exist. There's an article about that, which just the way we talked about here in Arcata, people want to downsize, but it's based on what the developers actually build. To repeat what I said earlier, I believe the results of the FM3 survey should have been presented at a regular meeting because there's a lot of information there that I think the public would have liked to hear talk about. That's it in general. I don't know how I appear to you, but I do appreciate the work that you're doing, and I agree with you more than I disagree. I'm not sure how it comes off, but I do. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Fred. And I do believe you can watch that FM3 presentation on.
Yeah, I
our
just was
YouTube.
noting that I would report that out too. So we recorded that portion of the meeting, and that will be uploaded to our YouTube site.
Awesome. Do we have anybody online?
We have one. Call-in user 2. Go ahead.
Good evening.
Yep, go ahead.
This is John Emig calling from Valley West. Happy to be with you all this evening. 2 people previously in public comment have mentioned, one was the engineer who'd come here for additional schooling, and she said her home was near the freeway. And another gentleman who comments very often brought up, in both cases, vehicle noise. And as an eco-groovy sort of community, I think that we need to be reminded that noise pollution is pollution. And I would hope the council would make it a priority to see that any noise and ordinances that we have are enforced, and perhaps make even stricter noise ordinances. And that would be a police issue. And that brings me to the second item that the woman, the business owner from the plaza, very eloquently spoke about the gatherings in the plaza that inhibited usual people, the public, from going about their business there. And I agree with everything she said. I too am a compassionate person. I love the idea of having fun, but it seems like it gets out of hand, in my opinion. And the same thing happens in Valley West up here at the shopping center. So everything that she said about the plaza goes for Valley West at the shopping center as well. And along with maybe additional police patrols that would quell that sort of activity, Courtyards Apartments is high density with elderly people and young families with children. We could use a patrol during the day, once a day, and one once in the evening. And I think that would go a long way to helping the residents here feel safe. An agenda item that I would like to see relevant to that is what percentage of the revenue for Arcata comes from the Valley West area, including the industrial properties. And maybe there would be more of a balance of how much police presence there is and other kinds of investments here for public safety. And so I'd like to see that on the agenda to ask staff to give us a specific number of what percentage of the revenue comes from this area. And then another agenda item I would request is that you could discuss what the obstacles are for having a public safety committee. I understand that it's understaffed and you need to promote it somehow, but that liaison between the public and the police, I think, would go a long way toward perhaps helping address these situations of police
Thank you, John.
patrols.
That's your time. Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you.
All right, we have one more. Jim, go ahead, Jim.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
All right, so I'm going to try to get through this without getting muted. It's pretty quick. I was just wondering, in the light of the video for the portion on the survey, if, I know in some meetings that they don't video, there's an audio available, and just wondering if there's any chance there's an audio for the entire goals meeting. I'd love to hear it. If it's available, if you could possibly attach that, to those with that meeting, I think that would be helpful, since it wasn't available as far as, online and stuff. Now, that's my request, and I don't know if it's possible, but thanks, and have a good night.
Thanks, Jim.
Yes, there is an audio recording, and yes, it will be attached to the meeting.
Thank you. Yep, so I'm already off.
No, nobody else.
Chief, you're up. All right. And so we have our new Chief Silvers, and we are going to receive an activity report for the first quarter of 2024. Thank you so much.
And there are copies on that back chair if there was anyone that didn't receive a copy of the quarterly report.
Good evening. Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Excuse me, I'm battling a cold, so I'll try to. Yeah, that might be a good idea. I don't blame you at all. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk about the first quarter of 2024. It's been a busy one for the police department, both inside and out. We'd like to hit on a few things that are going on or have transpired over this first 3 months. Inside, we've started to institute the first ever wellness program for our employees. It's very important to me and to the city that we provide something that allows our employees to express themselves. They unfortunately deal with a lot of stuff that can cause a lot of stress, and stress can cause a lot of emotional and physical ailments. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity for this to come in. And we've already started, we're part of a regional peer support group. And so our folks have been able to start that training a couple of weeks ago. Next week, they will be in-house for us to be able to spend a little time with and get to know their counseling people. So we're looking forward to that. The other thing we've done is we've made 3 promotions with me allowed to take this position. We've been able to promote a lieutenant and a sergeant, and then also kind of a lateral move for a patrol sergeant to move into the detective sergeant position. So that's been really exciting for our people to be able to have a little movement, get some people to learn some new job skills, and to be able to show their leadership and their ability. I thought I saw the light on.
You're going to share who our promotions were?
Sure. Chris Ortega promoted to, excuse me. Chris Ortega promoted to lieutenant. And then Victoria Johnson, who was a detective, promoted to sergeant. The lateral move is Patrol Sergeant Keith Altizer moved to the detective sergeant position. And so they've just been in there. Victoria and Keith have just been in Victoria a couple of days, and Keith about a week and a half. So we're just getting started. We were able to hire two more community ambassadors to fill the full staff of 7 during this quarter. And then as we move into these new positions with everybody, our overall staffing is also continuing to improve. I think I spoke to you in December, and at that time we had just graduated 3 trainees from the academy. They are well into their training program. They should be out in probably the next 3 to 4 weeks, which will be a great help to us. And we also have a dispatcher who is about 12 weeks into her training program as well. And so those will all be great additions to our team. With all of them coming out, specifically the officers, that will allow us in the coming months to be able to fill out our detective bureau again, and then also add 2 additional officers to the community outreach team. So historically, or since that team was formed, it has solely been 1 sergeant. That's Luke Scown. So the outreach team will benefit greatly from having 2 additional team members. They'll be able to address many things for us. I have heard, we spoke last night a little bit at the goal setting about the plaza. I did hear the business owner today. We will most definitely do what we can in the meantime, but as these officers come out, it allows us to do a little more directed patrol in areas, the plaza, Valley West. So it will greatly enhance our ability. I guess I'm kind of cheating down here a little bit at the staffing. We're currently 2 positions down, but we have in our staffing numbers right now, we have one is a academy, attending the academy, and then we still do have those 3. So we're operating a little lower than our numbers show right now, but that will improve as people either come out of the academy or come out of the training program. And then if you kind of want to go into the statistics of this, we had a little over 8,900 incidents this quarter. That's trending a little higher than last year. Excuse me. We had about 33,000 for the year last year, just to give you a perspective of where we're at. I would assume that that's probably going to continue to rise as we get more police officers on the street, because those incidents are not just calls for service, but they're also officer initiated. And then going down a little bit, we had 330 total arrests for the quarter. We took 666 reports. And then the top 5 response locations, typically the first 3 are pretty consistent for us. And then the bottom 2, which the bottom 2 kind of come and go, if you will. But consistently that 5 are around for us. I kind of touched on staffing. And then if we kind of move over to the other side of the page, it's kind of our alternative response, I guess we would call it, a section of our department. The community ambassadors, they've had 511 business interactions, and within that group of interactions, they call it a contact, a conversation, and so they break them out a little bit for them, but I went ahead and combined them for any interaction they had with the business. And then also with the unhoused contacts, they break them out a little more defined, but I put them together there. And then I guess what's a little kind of took me back was 869. They judge them by buckets. They have 5-gallon buckets that they walk around with. And so for this 3-month period, 869 buckets of trash that they've removed from the city, which is tremendous. I mean, you know, I see them constantly as I'm going around town, and they're consistent, and they make a tremendous impact. Juvenile diversion currently has about 33 open cases. You know, they're steady. They do a lot to help the youth in our community. They're in the schools. They continue to do a great job. The 36 people who signed up for, in this case, it was the Loving Solutions part of Parent Project, if you will. I was told that that's the most they've ever had sign up. So they're still going forward. And then the MIST this quarter was 49 persons served, and then 25 of those were newly receiving services. And then parking citations, there was 1,485. And then I just threw in a couple of here at the bottom. They've made 774 traffic stops during this 3 months period, and then 45 DUI arrests. So we've been busy. We're looking forward to getting our staffing back up so that we can build out from there. And I guess to comment on one of the last commenters, John was one of the folks that I met when we went on our walk in Valley West, and he had mentioned Courtyard Circle patrols. While not every day, I've made it myself. I've tried to go through there a couple of times. So, you know, I understand we are hearing some of the issues, and we are and will continue to try and address them the best that we can.
Thank you so much. I'm going to open it up for council. I just, you know, and I know Kimberly's going to probably bring it up, so I'm going to steal her thunder a little, but it seems like the top response locations are very concentrated in Valley West, which I'll let you go from there.
So, yeah, I guess I wanted to say that I will ask that the 500 Valley West is at the shopping center, then the 4701 is the Grove, the Home Key Project, and the 4975 would be the West Village Studios. So the shopping center and the 2 Home Keys, where we're having all the action, if you will?
In Valley West, right.
Okay.
And then the other here is like Safeway or that shopping center here.
Right.
And then the hospital.
Okay. Could I ask another question? Okay, so I had a couple questions. I'm super grateful for the diversion program and the Parent Project. I was a recipient. I took that when I had my teenager, I think in 7th grade. When we left a charter school, went to Arcata High, it was like, boom. So it was a great program. Do you know if you'll be able to offer that in bilingual, both that and the Loving Solutions in the future, ongoing?
You know, I don't know at this point. I can surely check and get back to you.
Okay. And then the other program is, I love what MIST does. I'm wondering, my concern is about adolescent youth right now, and I could be wrong, correct me, that the only response that you can have for an adolescent youth who's having issues, whether it be mental health or behavioral, is to call law enforcement. And I'm a little reticent to have that. I want our youth to have a different relationship with our law enforcement. And so we don't really have anything in between that's comparable to MIST for adolescent youth. Is that correct?
Depending on what it is, we may call juvenile diversion. And I think that we could call MIST out to the scene, if you will, to assist us. And maybe make a contact for us and give us some advice as to who may provide those services.
So what I'm hearing from people in the community is that MIST has not been dispatched for youth in a particular instances, that's never been. It's always been law enforcement. And so I'm wondering if we might kind of think out of the box, somehow brainstorm something that can address adolescent youth. I know when we looked at the FM3 survey, they parsed it out in two separate ones. One was about juvenile diversion, the other was about activities. And of course, idle minds, idle hands get in trouble. So that could be part of the solution, is that we have more youth activities, but also, just like everyone, mental health issues, not being, the county's not responsive. And I know that that's on them, but then it's our Arcata adolescent youth that suffers when they don't respond after 5 or on the weekend. And we can't time these emergencies, unfortunately. So if there was something that we could somehow fill in that gap for Arcata, for our adolescent youth, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know that, I think that's a bigger project, if you will, or not. I don't know that that's something that specifically the police department would be able to come up with, given the examples like you're saying, if it's a Friday night or a Saturday, and then, a juvenile is having a mental health issue or something like that. I think that may be a bigger issue than what we would do or be able to do, certainly right now at this time.
But that's what MIST does, right? They come for, it's a mobile intervention crisis, whether it be behavioral or a mental health issue. It's a de-escalation, and we don't have that equivalent, it's my understanding, for adolescent. We have to call the law enforcement.
Right. The way MIST works for us through our department is they come and they work for us 2 days a week. And then we get a call, an officer goes out, and it's clear that someone is dealing with a mental health crisis or a mental health issue, rather than having us deal with it. Rightfully so, we call MIST. They come out, they have the expertise, the training, and press, and then also the contacts to help these people get through it, or to put them in touch with people that can do that. So it's not per se that you can call at 2 o'clock in the morning and a group will come out. Now, I do know that going forward, there are going to be some changes, kind of with some mandates of 24-hour services. That's through the county as well. And that is not even begun, but that is on the horizon, and that's something that's coming in the future.
So Kimberly, I was thinking, so I always understood that the police are called first and then they call MIST. It's not like you call MIST first.
That's correct.
Right.
Okay.
I just want to say that just these numbers of the top response locations, I do think that when staffing allows, having a hub in Valley West is really important. I mean, I work out there too. Sometimes when I'm alone in my office, I lock the door. But it just seems like that is a worthwhile use of resources to have people staffed out there more when that becomes a possibility. So that's one thing. And then, can you address noise and what, and let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about noise.
Noise in general? I mean, I don't know.
Well, noisy cars. I mean,
Noisy
honestly,
cars?
I have one car because I work on Hyndon, and there is a truck that drives by 2 times a day. It sets off car alarm. I mean, it's not really my wheelhouse. I don't know, but I do know that there are noise ordinances, and what is your policy on enforcing it, if any?
2 different things. The car you're describing, that's a vehicle code. We did have a noise ordinance with the city, and then, so many decibels. My experience, as long as I've been here, I don't know that has ever been enforced. As far as brought to it's been enforced in the sense that you would go to a party, you'd go to a concert or something and say, hey, you're over you need to shut it down. But as far as taking administrative action or anything through the city, I'm not aware of that. It could have happened, but I'm not aware. And then the vehicle code part of it, the best I can tell or ask you is to call us when it's happening. It's tough. I mean, it's because obviously they're moving vehicles.
They're moving, right. No, and I know, like, I've done it drive-alongs with Sergeant Scown, and, I remember, like, driving past Blondie's, and he's like, oh, that one, we're there all the time. We shut them down for noise. So I know that, it's something that people are aware of. I just wanted to make sure that we're having a little bit of this conversation.
And I will say that in most of the time when we deal with a party or whatever is the source of the noise, we can typically get compliance. In the case of a party, there are avenues of, they issue a warning when we go. If they don't either shut it down, reduce the noise, get the crowd inside your house, or there is the ability to cite them. Then they're charged a per minute rate per officer until it is corrected.
And then I just want to once again echo the conversation that we had last night and address Natalie's, public comment that just working up to have that presence on the plaza and just making things uncomfortable for people that are breaking the law and just holding people accountable to the same standards that the business owners are, as far as like loitering or smoking or drinking or dogs. Just a conversation to keep having, because I know that it's not something that is going to like solve itself, but it's a conversation that we should continue to have.
Thank you for bringing that up with regards to getting. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll be quick. Okay, so thank you for bringing that up for Valley West, and it sounds like we will have a building anyway that they can occupy, so that's great. It may not be open for public, but it is a place for you to be. You don't have to drive back to City Hall to use the restroom, et cetera. And I think just having the cars in the parking lot, having that visual presence might be helpful. I'm wondering about the vehicle code and enforcement, like making people uncomfortable. I think it's just like a half dozen, maybe not even, that are like, I don't want to make a blanket statement. So young people, louder the better. It's like cool to have this really obnoxious, loud engine that literally makes me jump out of my skin when it comes up. It's like, whoa. And then, also car enthusiasts, but I think it's just a few. So if you give them a ticket, they're going to tell their friends, and pretty soon they're going to take that modified whatever it is that makes all this noise that shouldn't have even passed DMV or whoever does that stuff. But it's out now, and we need to enforce that, and I think that it'll make everyone happier. I hear them up and down on the freeway because I live out there. And I couldn't imagine what it would be like in a tiny little cul-de-sac where everything's all quiet. All of a sudden, here comes the big, loud engine making this. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Okay. Ladies, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to say thank you for I appreciate the statistics. That's nice to have, and I know the public appreciates that. And thanks for the great job that you're doing in your role. I'm sure there's a lot of adjusting to a new position. And yeah, we're just glad to have so many new people with us, and the enthusiasm that I've seen when I've been out talking with the newer people on our staff is really great. So I'm appreciative of that.
Oh, just thank you. And again, I like numbers, and it's great to see this, and just hopefully next time you're here before us, you won't have to stay till almost 9:30, 10 o'clock. So just thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, I appreciate, every time reading feedback about the officers that go out of their way to be extraordinary. And I think that I'm really proud of Arcata Police. And thank you. Alex, one more thing.
Yeah, I wanted to address, she brought up the two locations that are both home key projects. So do we have any kind of meetings there, working with people? I mean, you have so many, well, they aren't so actually that many, 154. Well, maybe it's a lot. I have no idea in comparison to other things. But I'm wondering what is going on there that could be actually dispelled, or how it be able to handle those two groups of places. I know F Street's a different story down there, but if there is some way that there could be some kind of meetings or whatever they're doing to talk about trying to eliminate this many calls.
I think it's important to, did I cut you off? I'm sorry. Okay. I think it's important to note that while these addresses may be, or the incident may be related to these addresses, it's not always the people who are living there.
Right.
You know, it's the address of where it occurred. You know, it might be somebody in the parking lot that somebody calls about or something happens. So, and there is a lot of foot traffic, you know, so it can be, while there are a lot of calls up there, you know, it can be a little bit confusing, is, you know, that some of this stuff might be just coincidence that it's in that area.
I guess it's the way Kimberly brought it up specifically for addresses. But you know, I have one other thing, and of course, I talk about this a lot, and that is cars that only have one headlight. I'm sorry, it's real. But you know, it all started when I had a ride-along a long time ago with a policeman. And he said, that's what we do, is that we find people, we see them, and then there's other things going on. They could be drunk, or they could have drugs, or they could, it's just a good thing, you know, so I bring it up, and here you are. You came specifically to hear that from me again.
And I do understand about the headlights, I do understand about the taillights, and I do agree that, you know, if you correct the behavior through enforcement, sometimes that works. You know, it takes, I guess, being in the right area to stop those vehicles. Many times people will call and say there was a loud car, and of course, like I said earlier, that's a moving
Or you
vehicle.
just see them when you're out driving, or I see a lot of them. And, you know, one time I said to this couple that were in their car, she had her window down, and I go, oh, you know, have your headlight out. And she says, you haven't fixed that yet? So, you know, anyway.
So it's actually not 154, what you were mentioning, it's the total of those three addresses are 336. And I would be curious what those numbers were 2 years ago. I think that we will see a huge increase in incidents. And I think that that speaks to what on-site services are being addressed. Like you said, a lot of times it's people who are associated with the people that live there, but not necessarily the people that are there. You know, the guests and things. So maybe there can be a conversation with both of the home key projects to ask them to be good neighbors and to vet the people that come in here. You know, it's supposed to be a gated community, but it really isn't. Yeah, in the 20 years that I've been out there, and I don't want to be a naysayer, I'm just going to say it has never been this bad crime-wise. Stabbings, you know, we just had one out at Valley West McDonald's. Two unhoused individuals got into an altercation, and one was stabbed and taken away in an ambulance. And then a couple days later, a shopper was assaulted by two unhoused people. And it's like 4 out of 7 days. Maybe I'm wrong. It just feels like it's almost a daily incidence. I will not walk anymore in Valley West. I get into my car and I drive over to the marsh. And I'm just being honest. I know that nobody wants to hear that, but that's the reality, and we need to address it before it gets rooted and it becomes even worse. Because it's not safe. It's not safe for my daughter. It's not safe for some of the elderly. John and Mig called in, and he doesn't feel safe necessarily out there to walk. He has to get in his car also to drive somewhere else. And I feel like that, you know, the neighbors, the neighborhood do deserve to live peacefully in their community and to feel safe. And at the same time, these folks that are unhoused deserve to have, and that's not your job, of course, but housing. You know, desperate people do desperate things. And so we need to look at the big picture if we want to start addressing these issues.
So I'll just add, I think the right venue for the conversations, and part of, I think, the chief putting these statistics together is to be able to start to have that comparative data as we move forward. But is the Homeless Services Working Group. We are working on getting a representative either from, you know, the Danco operation or RCAA that would be attending those meetings so we can bring these statistics up in that setting. I would also offer that in opening a lot of housing projects over the years of being here, there is always a break-in period. We saw it with, well, I won't list them all, but we've seen that with literally, whether it's dedicated low income or whether it's just larger housing complexes, we do see a break-in period that usually is about 2 years. I do expect these numbers to go down, as we have seen with other projects over time, but I think tracking it will be important and working with them to ensure it happens.
All right, well, thank you so much. We'll let you go and get some rest and take care of yourself. And thank you so much. If you guys haven't done a ride along lately, I would suggest that you make an appointment to do one. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed our walk again. That was great. Thank you.
All right, are there any other staff updates?
Just quickly, a couple of things. Construction season is in full swing, so you will see, especially around Old Arcata Road, there will be a lot of both congestion and controlled traffic, so if you can stay out of that area, please do. We've got one more meeting, I'll report it again, but the farmers market, we are looking at full plaza closures for the farmers market this year. It's been a long time safety improvement in that downtown area that this community has been working on, so those will start at the April 20th market.
Yay. Okay, let's do council reports. Kimberly, you want to start?
Whoops, I went to an Arcata Arcata High School, it's getting late, sports fundraiser dinner at the Arcata Community Center, and just want to remind people there is a Valley West community cleanup on Sunday. Come one, come all. It's on Howland Drive, 9 to 11. Hope to see you there.
Okay, so we had Humboldt Transit Authority meeting this morning, and our city engineer came and talked about reconnecting Arcata, and he was interested in having HTA, Humboldt Transit Authority staff, et cetera, being able to help, and so that was a request that was basically made. And on our next agenda, which will be in May, we'll have a resolution in order to support that effort so that we can have that happening. And one thing I forgot for the goals, the sidewalk cleaner, the machine that can clean the sidewalks. And that's something I've talked about off and on for a long time. And it can be in Arcata, downtown, it can be in Valley West, it can move around. And maybe some of the shopping centers would actually want to contract with us to do it. And I think it would be valuable. And I don't know how I forgot it, but I had all the information about where you could buy one. I don't know if you'll allow me to add that to the goals or not.
I'm sure we can talk about it when it comes. We're going to talk about budget soon, so I'm sure we can. That would be an appropriate place to talk about it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are you okay?
That's it.
All right. Yes, there will be one more meeting before the plaza is closed to traffic. It's, in conjunction with Earth Day. I know Zero Waste will be having an event at the co-op, so I just encourage everybody to, I know that the North Coast Growers Association has been working very diligently to make sure there is plenty of ADA parking and that they have a plan in place. And so if you are unable to, if you need to park, you should be able to. And just remember, this is going to be the first day. There will be kinks to work out. I don't think anything's going to be perfect the first day, but I think the Growers Association and the city appreciates constructive feedback, and we are just trying to do this to be good stewards of the earth. Okay, so gosh, was it last week? I don't know. I was in Burbank I'm on the League of California Cities Policy Committee. I'm on the Housing, Community, and Economic Development Committee, and so we got a very high-level briefing of all of the housing priority bills that are coming through the pipeline that are about to go into legislation. Really, really interesting stuff. I don't want to talk about a great length about them right now, but lots of discussions about local control versus state control, and it's just really interesting to hear other perspectives from other cities. And I think that's it for me.
So at HCOG meeting last month, I think the highlight for me was Supervisor Arroyo discussed the results of her master's thesis that she just recently completed, which is the perceptions of trail safety in Humboldt County, an analysis of safety concerns, factors that impact trail use, and the value people place on trails. And it was really interesting to hear sometimes what people's perceptions aren't really necessarily statistically what's going on when it comes to safety and that, but she did a great discussion of that. So, and then I think that's the only outside assignment meeting that I had, but I did just want to take a really quick second to address some of the things that were brought up regarding the Earth flag and the ruling that Dave Meserve just informed us about. That, and so I just want people to know that in addition to serving our public, which is our job, it is also our sworn duty to uphold the laws. And it's not that we can uphold the laws we think make sense. So I think for those people that are passionate about this, it's more like addressing what those laws are. We are mere council people. It is our job to uphold those laws. And I think that I feel like we really did a great balance when that passed. We knew that if it passed, there was a question, by our legal team as if that, if it was meeting the law, but we flew it anyways, right? So we heard the people, we flew it, and we did our due diligence by going to court. The name that was chosen to represent us was not something that was chosen. It's in the world of the courts and legal stuff, which is sometimes, no offense, but a little bit of a different world. So what it means to us is not necessarily what it means to them. So case name aside, I think that we did what we were elected to do. And we will just keep, moving forward with that as things turn out. But I just wanted to offer kind of clarification on what we are able to do and not to do.
Thank you, Stacy. All right, River Coast Energy Authority. We had a really amazing grant that we applied for, and hopefully we'll hear great things about. And RCEA was the lead agency in partnership with the Yurok tribe, Hoopa tribe, Karuk tribe, Blue Lake Rancheria, and then technical assistance from Shots Energy and PG&E for this GRIP grant, which is the Grid Resilience Innovation Partnership. And it's actually a federal grant through the U.S. Department of Energy. But basically what it would do is give an insane amount of money. It was like, I think we're looking at like nine digits here, something like 136 million. But to build microgrids for all of the individual tribes to be able to create and own their own microgrids, especially like for where there's super bad grid reliability, like way out. Meredith and I were talking about this earlier because she's lived out there, out Orleans, Somes Bar, out Karuk Reservation. Like, it's crazy how they're in, like, I think the top 10 of the most power outages of anywhere in California. So it's a super exciting grant opportunity. It's just the first step in a really long line of, a lot of applications and steps and getting money together, but it's a really cool opportunity, and it really brings to light, sorry, I'm going last, I'm going to be long-winded, but something that we talked about last night, and just something that I really took away from when I went to Civic Well, which is like, in these small rural areas, like to bring together all of the different partners and to be able to work together to actually get something done. Because probably if the Karuk tribe applied for a huge grant, they wouldn't have the capacity to be able to build a microgrid. But if they can work with all these other tribes and PG&E and us, and it's like, oh, it can happen. And so I think, to take those lessons and put it in our own communities here too is awesome. Also, RCEA, the e-bike rebates are out and have started. So if you're trying to double down on those California state rebates and the RCEA rebates, now is your time. We had an Equity Arcata board meeting. We are continuing to develop that board. I did have the opportunity on Saturday to go volunteer at the Sanctuary Garden. They're there every Saturday from 10 to 12, and they unveiled the new signage that the city helped partner with them to put up, just about what a sanctuary garden is, what being a sanctuary space means, and kind of also like the reporting of any vandalism or hate crimes having to do with that. And so they had a really nice celebration, did some weeding, and had delicious atole. So it was great. And then some updates for the chamber. The chamber mixer is tomorrow, Thursday, at the campus bookstore right across from us here from 5:30 to 7. And then also on Friday, they're hosting the quarterly chamber young professionals mixers, which is going to be from 6 to 8 at the Plaza Grill View Room, and they're doing free headshots So if you are a young professional and you need a really nice picture taken of you, come on down. And then also Friday, April 12th is going to be the April Arts Arcata, and it's going to be a big one, 4 to 8, and it's also Cal Poly's Spring Preview Week. So there's going to be a lot of stores open late. There's going to be a DJ in the middle of the plaza. I know I'm going to be probably helping with some tabling that Equity Arcata is doing, and so there'll be local nonprofits out. And it's going to be a great fun time to just like celebrate spring and all the great things the chamber's doing. So, and some nice weather. So with that, that's my update.
Congratulations on what's going on with the tribes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's fantastic.
As someone that has lived on tribal land, I can attest that my power went out for 9 days in a row once, and I think that people are going to be very pleased for that. All right, let's set a date for study sessions with city committee commission chairpersons.
We will keep doodle polling you on that one, and we will hopefully have some answers by your next meeting.
All right, and then budget study session, my favorite.
We're just confirming April 16th.
April 16th?
5:30.
I think I have that on my, is it
Will
there?
we be able to have that available via Zoom, or will it be like the last one?
I mean, I think that's a discussion certainly that the council can have. You know, we've taken criticism doing them both ways. You know, it is easier for us to do Zoom if you are up on the dais. The conversation that you can have around the table, you know, can lend to better conversation of the council. But it does make it more awkward to do the Zoom kind of hybrid option.
I remember one time we just took off. They sat in that circle, and then they all could see each other, and they could all talk to each other, but we didn't have Zoom then. So I don't know how you do Zoom under that, but it seemed to work really well because you were able to have everyone sort of in a group, and the council was totally mixed into that group.
Okay, I don't think that this is the time that we should discuss this, but.
You brought it up, so.
Yeah. All right. My precious says, this
Use
meeting
it.
is adjourned.